We're not here to judge or rank the stories we hear in order of worst to the not so bad. This is a safe space to learn, and even with our differences, we can together figure out how to make our systems and practice better for the next Black and in care generation. That's what I believe. So we haven't really publicized the running order of today. We're just going to go with the flow of things, and we don't want you to feel like, oh, what's next, what's next, what's next? But what is next is our powerful workforce panel. And I'm not going to introduce them because my steering team member, Emma, come to the stage. She will be chairing this part of the conference, and she will introduce them for you. But please take your notes, be ready to engage, and it's an interactive workshop as well, day, so please don't feel shy in asking questions when the time is right. But right now, I'm going to hand this over to Emma. There you go.
Good morning. So, for those of you that are here today that are care experienced, we want to say a huge thank you. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to listen to you, to learn with you, to improve our practice, and to do better for our Black children and our Black young people in care. For those of you that are not care experienced, I want you to think about an occasion when you spoke to a child or a young person and you were interested about their culture. Just take a moment and try and recall when you did that. How did it feel for you? And how do you think it felt for the child or young person? And if you're care experienced, I want you to recall and remember an occasion when a teacher or a social worker or an equivalent spoke to you and was interested about your culture. And what did that feel like? And I imagine, regrettably, that for those of you that are care experienced, not all of you would have had that. Not all of you would have been asked those questions. And that's why we're here today, and that's why today is really, really, really important. It speaks to that. It speaks to why you've all come here today. So thank you. In a minute, our fantastic panel are going to introduce themselves. But just to bring us back to what we're talking about, this is a panel to think about a culturally competent workforce. What is that? What does it look like? It's not a state where we arrive and we get to 100% cultural competence and we've arrived there. 100%, we've got it. Tick, fantastic. It's evolving for all of us, for every single one of us. It's evolving. We have to really listen. We have to be curious. But we're not, being curious isn't a given. You have to ask permission for being curious. You have to have the green light, yeah? And sometimes when we're asking those questions, it won't be okay. Sometimes we need to listen, and a child or young person might say, no, not today. Actually, I can't do that today. But we have to keep being curious, keep asking, keep stopping, keep learning. And then we need to caretake. When we've got that information, we really need to caretake. We need to look after it. We need to handle it with care. We need to be respectful, we need to keep listening, keep checking, and keep evolving. So, we're going to have a panel with questions. The panel members are open to questions from all of you, so please do it with kindness. Because they're all a bit nervous, as am I. So we will have, there will be opportunity, I think there will be mics that will be passed around by our wonderful, lovely assistants here, who are more than capable. So think of questions that you might want to pose to the panel. We've also got some questions that the panel have already seen, and they will be able to answer those, hopefully from the heart with real experiences. So I'm going to hand over now so the panel can introduce themselves. So first of all, Darryl, if you would like to, for the panel, they're going to tell you their name, they're going to tell you their role, and they're going to tell you why they're here.
Good morning. I've got a clap already, I'm doing well. My name's Darryl Pottinger. I'm an experienced foster carer, predominantly caring for children of Black Caribbean and Black African ethnicity. I'm here today to share, listen and learn. Thank you.
Hello, good morning. Can you hear me all right? Good morning, everyone. It's an absolute pleasure to be here with you. My name is Vivian Okeze Tirado. I am currently the Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Lead for West Sussex County Council. I was also England Overall Social Worker of the Year and Social Justice Advocate in 2021. Thank you. Unfortunately, we now have a successor as of November. It was lovely while it lasted, but it does last for a lifetime. So I worked in fostering for about 7.5 years. So I was a supervising social worker in the fostering team in West Sussex for about 7.5 years. And I had passion for young people, particularly those from the Black, how we meet the needs of those from the Black and minority ethnic background. I'm also pleased to say that I'm the author of Diversity Acrostic Poem, working with diversity and developing culturally sensitive practice in social work and social care. I'm happy to say, I'll stop in a minute. I'm happy to say that my new book, Diversity, A Guide to Cultural Sensitive Practice, will be published next month. That's me. Thank you.
Thank you, Vivian. Antonia.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? Good morning.
Morning, everyone.
Good morning, everyone. My name is... Good morning, everyone. My name's Antonia Ogundaizi, currently working in Essex County Council as Service Manager for Anti-Racist Practice. I'm here today. I'm going to just keep it real. I'm a Black woman. This is my community. If no other communities understand us as much as we do, for me, it's my responsibility and duty to always bring it back down to the heart of things, which is human rights. I'm a social worker at heart, and I'm here today because I'm very passionate about this, not only in work, but also outside of work. And I'm here to listen and learn, and also to share good practice. So thank you for having me, for the privilege to be here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Morning, everyone. Morning. So my name's Diane Benjamin, and I am the Director of Children's Social Care in Hackney. I am in a really privileged position. I think, given my role, given my title, I'm in awe of what I do all day, every day. And just the experiences of being able to share who I am. I'm a proud Northerner. You know, you can cut me in half and I'm Northern. But I'm also proud to be Black, and I'm a Black woman. That's really, really important for me as well. And being in the position I am, absolutely never, ever take that for granted. Here today by surprise a little bit. My director above me, Jackie Burt, was due to be here, but due to a family emergency, she's asked me to step in. I'm absolutely, absolutely proud to be here today, so thank you for having me, and touch wood, I'll do okay.
Thank you, Diane. Thank you. Yeah, special thank you to Diane, who literally had 0 notice, so that's courage right there. Okay, so does anybody have a question that they would like to start with for the panel? Your question is under the broad heading of a culturally competent workforce. Thank you, Denise.
Hi everyone, fantastic to be here. So I've had I can give you 2 examples of foster carers, and I've got a question for the end of it. So the first foster carer, I'm a social worker, so one of the foster carers gave some pork to a Muslim child who was 8 years old in their care. And then the second foster carer, there was a little Black child from Jamaica her mother was detained and she wouldn't eat breakfast. So my foster carer called me and said, Denise, she's not eating breakfast. I said, what are you giving her? Sausages, cornflakes, and so on. I said, oh, put her on the phone to me. So she came on the phone and she says, Madam, could you bar me up some caramel porridge? And I automatically knew what that was. My mum is Jamaican. I had lots of caramel porridge. And this foster carer was like, Denise, what is it? What's caramel porridge? What do I need to do? So I told her, get the caramel, get the coconut, get the nutmeg, put it all together and you make caramel porridge. How do we get more, and both of these foster carers are white. How do we get foster carers like that, the last one, more than the first one, who thought it was okay to give a Muslim child pork in the morning for breakfast?
Thank you for that. So who on the panel would like to come back to that?
I think, it's an awful experience, isn't it, for that child, having, that traumatic experience of being separated from her mother and then not knowing where she is, and then food is so familiar, isn't it? Black people's food is so familiar for us. So I think there's something about training for foster carers, and I think that training starts at the onset of them becoming foster carers. We do that via induction, because they don't know whom they're going to get placed in their care. It's about being culturally competent and having all our foster carers having that insight, being able to kind of acknowledge, okay, this is a child that I don't know about their culture, what do I need to know? Because that foster carer reached out, didn't she? Not all foster carers are going to reach out, but we need to be reaching out to them. We need to be saying, okay, potentially, these are some children you may have. Food, hair care, skin care, you need to get this cream, you need to get the grease for our hair. All those things are important. So I think it starts with training, because I think you can't do that without that. And I think there's other things, that come in the way of that. But training is so important from the onset for me in terms of our foster carers.
So, Darryl, you're a foster carer.
I am.
So I'm going to put you a bit on the spot, because that's kind of the nature of what we're doing.
Yes.
Can you respond to Denise's questions?
It's unfortunate. Again, it's lack of cultural awareness. I think maybe some sort of handbook pre-placement would be welcomed. Kind of list of kind of do's and don'ts in terms of cultural understanding and cultural awareness. Again, food is integral to. I'm being shown a book as we speak. We're going to keep it fluid. So again, I've come across this book as well. Again, my wife and I have a Black Caribbean background, so in terms of cornmeal porridge and oatmeal porridge and all those kind of things, it's in us, it's familiar to us, so we take it for granted and we just prepare those as part of breakfast. But there's a very good book here, Black Children in Care, Health, Hair and Skin. So local authorities accessing these sort of resources and providing these to their foster carers pre-placement will go a long way. And having conversations, one of the issues in foster care at the moment is the shortage of foster carers nationally. And what happens with that is that we're placing Black children in placements that are not culturally suitable because of that lack of foster care resource. So I think that's something we need to work on in terms of trying to encourage families from the Black community, Black African, Black Caribbean, to come forward to be those carers for children who have more cultural competence and are able to provide the care that our children need. But yes, local authorities, those in local authorities, Black Children in Care, Health, Hair and Skin is here and available.
Little promo.
I don't know if that answers the question. I don't know if that answers your question. Okay, I'll hold on to this, I'll get back to you.
Okay, has anyone else got a question? Yeah. Oh, you'd like to contribute? Yeah, okay.
Oh, sorry.
Go for you.
I was just going to say that, so sometimes, I don't know, I know that there are social workers here, so sometimes basic transfer summary helps. So when you're placing a child, I appreciate that sometimes the circumstances in which we place children, we don't have that opportunity to have those meaningful conversations with parents. How about what do you eat for breakfast? I don't want you to take my child away. But those transfers, sometimes we have the information, social workers, so transferring it to the the foster carer is quite key. So one of the things that we're doing in our local authority is using the cultural genograms to gather information on children. So information like what is important to you as you're coming into this new home. What is it the religion? Is it what the food you like? So those basic information are quite helpful for when children come into care. And also speaking to the actual child, coming down to the level of the child and saying to the child, this is my home, it's now your home. This is what we usually have for breakfast, but what would you like? We can go and shop for it later. It's basic conversations like that with the child. The child might not engage at the onset, but they've taken it in that you actually care about their food. And a lot of the times we want to show off our food, which is okay, our sausages, bacon, and eggs. It's okay, it's lovely, but it's not what the child is used to. So it's about having those basic, we call them mundane questions, but they are not so mundane. They are okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Vivian. Before we move on, Antonia, did you want to come?
Yeah, I just wanted to say the difference that you made in that dynamic, because you were present and your opinion and your contribution was valuable. It enabled that relational aspect to be had between the foster carer and yourself. So it just shows the importance of representation, bringing more black people to the table, and not only bringing them to the table, but honouring what they have to say and what they have to offer, which I think is really, really key as well for recruitment.
Thank you. So, question? Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, we've got another question now.
Yes, no.
My question, I liked what the middle lady said about the tools that we could use to support the fostering, but I was thinking of the children, but I was thinking from the assessment point, actually is the foster care assessment is a long process, 12 weeks. At that point is where we should be asking the questions about how they're going to support if they have a placement that is different to their cultural norms and the rest of it. I think that would be very important, because we've got a huge pool of non-black foster carers and looking after black children, but that is the point of where we need to be having the discussion actually before then we make the judgment that yes, they are approved as foster carers. Don't know if that was a question, but any thoughts?
Does anyone want to come back to that?
Yeah, and I think it goes back to the importance of that quality assurance. So our managers insisting that, when assessments are done, it incorporates culture, race, asking the question and making sure that the social worker can be articulate to say, I've asked the question, this is the response. So being really, really intentional about keeping it on the agenda as well, and also being cautious of bias, because we know that in assessment, a lot of microaggressions, when, foster carers are being assessed, a lot of things put people off. So how can we ensure that we're being anti-racist, even from that point, before the child actually gets to the placement and is matched?
Thank you. Anyone else on that?
I think it goes back to the point of being culturally competent, doesn't it? And making sure our foster carers are culturally competent. You're right, that assessment process is very long. And we need to be clear, prior to approval, that our foster carers are competent. I'm in Hackney, it's such a diverse borough. And I need to be assured, as a Director of Children's Social Care, that the foster carers that we do have are able to meet needs. Meet the needs of our black and global majority children. For me, it's a given. And you're right, how do we do it? We do it by training, we do it within that assessment process as well.
And I think some of it is about noticing where the gaps are and talking to those gaps and saying, this carer is brilliant with all of these elements, they've got all of these skills, but there are some really big gaps around their knowledge or their confidence. And are these carers going to be able to challenge racism? What does that look like? Are we having those conversations when we're assessing foster carers? Not always. Not enough.
Yeah, I agree, not enough.
Yeah, okay. Anyone else? Question, I can see.
So we're respite carers for two black girls who are looked after by a white carer and have no memory of any other culture. How can we meaningfully affirm their cultural identity?
Great question, thank you. Do you want to go down?
Where do I start with that question? I think you need to, well, I'm not sure where you live in terms of what you have access to in terms of your community. So reaching into your community, seeing if you live in a diverse community, tapping into that in some way. I don't know what your family and friends network looks like, to see whether there's any additional diversity within your family and friends network that you can tap into for support and guidance around that. As respite carers, you're part of a larger, wider fostering community. Have you been given the opportunity to tap into any foster carers who had the same cultural background as the children you're providing respite care for? I don't know, that's a question I'm posing back to you. Have you had access to that? Have you been provided with that resource?
Yeah, we lived in Reading where we had a very diverse community. We just moved to Guildford area where there's not so much.
Less so. Okay. Then it's going to be a slight challenge, but it's about having that conversation with social services, explaining to them that you do know that there's a gap in your knowledge, gap in your understanding, and that you really want to fill that gap and be proactive in doing that, and encouraging the local authority to support you in that regard.
Just thinking about, Diane, when you and I spoke briefly earlier about what you're doing for carers around giving them some funding.
Yes, in Hackney, when black children are placed with white carers, for example, it's about thinking about their skincare, thinking about their hair care. So we are offering additional money to support carers to go and buy the cocoa butter, go and get the grease that particular children need for their hair. Learning how to plait, thinking about where they can go get the weave from, where they can go get the twists from, and where all that can get done. So it is about financially supporting carers to do that, and that's something we are doing in Hackney. So, potentially, as Darren was saying, it's about speaking to your local authority, what's on offer, asking for it potentially as well.
Yeah, I was just going to say the relationship between the foster carer and the supervising social worker is quite key. So I would always encourage foster carers to have that broad conversations with your supervising social worker. Sometimes supervising social workers have to go out of their way and take foster carers places. Go to a hair, I've done it before, go to a hair shop with my foster carer, find some hair products. So it's that discussions that we as foster carers, respite and mainstream, have that discussion. Hold on to them. They are your lifeline in terms of the work that you do. And where you're not getting the support, then you can reach out also to the managers, the supervising social workers managers, and also we have coffee mornings. I'm sure you have coffee mornings, foster carer coffee mornings, get-togethers, and please don't be afraid to ask questions. I would literally stop anyone. If I like your hair and I'm meeting you for the first time, hi, your hair is lovely. Where did you get? Do you want to share where you got that done? And we shouldn't be scared and to ask those questions because at the end of the day we're all learners. Yeah.
We do have, in my local authority, we do have an ethnic minority support group for foster carers, and you don't need to be from an ethnic minority to attend that support group. So I would ask that question whether the local authority, do you work directly with a local authority or with an IFA? A local authority? Okay, then they should, hopefully, have a minority ethnic support group for foster carers. If they don't, they need to create one. And hopefully you can have access to that, attend and pose questions, and those groups should be kind of informative for you.
I think that's a good point about going back to your local authorities, going back to your IFAs, going back to your managers, going back to senior leadership, saying we need this. This is not an option, we need this. I also think for me there's something about whether we make those groups voluntary or whether we make them mandatory. Are we saying to our foster carers, if you're looking after a child or a young person who's a different culture to your own, you have to go to this support group. This is not something you can pick and choose. I might go, I might not. Actually, if you're in that amazing position where you can look after your child or young person, welcoming them in your home, then you have to do this. This is part of what we're expecting of you. And I wonder if there's a bit more of a kind of need for that. We have expectations. These are not things that are voluntary and optional. That's just my view, but I think we should be doing more of that.
I agree, totally.
Antonia, did you want to comment?
Yeah, I was just thinking about, just some of the basics, like is the child's photograph in the home, in family pictures? Is there something that can, although it might be a short time, is there something that can show that child positively represented in the home? Things like dollies or things that look like them in the house, those things really can impact the child's self-esteem. So making sure that those basic needs represent the child, really.
Thank you. I think as well, the example you gave is a really good one, but it's also really sad in that you've got a child who you said doesn't have those connections. Didn't arrive with you, I think this is what I heard, didn't arrive with you with those natural connections to their identity, their heritage, their culture. That's a massive failing, not on you, but what you're trying to do. You're here and you're wanting to learn, which is brilliant. It's a beautiful thing. But it's a failing, isn't it, that a child has arrived with you and doesn't know all of that, hasn't arrived with all the things that we've talked about, all the examples. So, on that note, let's see if anyone else. I think I saw someone else.
You've got Mana at the front and then the lady behind.
Thank you.
So my question, I think you've answered it a bit, and the question that I had was actually in regards to how are we ensuring that the young person or the child feels like their cultural needs are being met? For example, sometimes you'll find that a black child may be placed with a black foster carer, but they're actually from two different countries, so their cultural needs and their cultural beliefs are going to be quite different, and sometimes those might even clash. So it's about how are we ensuring that those needs are being met, is that young person being spoken to. So I think I would like to find out, especially from like Darren and yourselves as social workers, what you have done in the past to kind of make sure and ensure that young person feels that their needs are being met, or what the challenges have been as well.
Good question. Well, in terms of the children that I've cared for, I'm from my makeup is that my mother's black, Caribbean, she's Jamaican, and my father is white European, he's Polish. I was raised by my mother in a Jamaican household, so that's kind of the lens through which I view things. In terms of the children I've cared for children of Jamaican heritage, I've cared for children from Dominica, and recently, well, for the last 14 years, children from Nigeria. So there are, in what you're saying, there are, how can I put it? There are similarities, but we're not the same. And it's recognizing that there are similarities. Black children come in a range of ethnicities, a range of cultural backgrounds, and it's about recognizing those differences and acknowledging those differences, and really tapping into the children's experience. What is it they want? What is it they is culturally relevant for them? And trying to start having conversations with them, pulling those stories out from them, because many of these children have complex histories, challenging backgrounds, but within those complex histories are many kind of beautiful stories that we can connect them back to their cultural heritage, and whether that's through food. If I can give an example, I care for a number of sibling groups. One of the sibling groups were from Dominica. So Dominica, Jamaica, similar but not the same. We need to recognize that. There was quite a bit of trauma in relation to their journey because their mother had passed away before they came to the UK. They were brought to the UK. So in terms of having conversations with them about their cultural identity, we had to navigate that trauma and that loss. But we did. And in doing that, the older sibling, who had more of a memory of her mother, started talking about dishes that her mother would make for her and that she enjoyed. So we heard that story. That was a positive. So we pulled and attached to that story, and we said, well, why don't we introduce those dishes into our meal times? So that's something that we did, which connected her to her past, to a positive memory of her mother, and connected us and made her feel like she belonged to our household. That's just, I've gone off on a, okay.
Does anyone else want to come in? Okay. And more questions, I think? Yeah?
The comment really, just to say about sometimes, it's about the training that the local authority actually gives, and I think your point about it being mandatory, I think is something we should seriously consider, because obviously, you could have looked at the advert for the kids, if you got room, if you got love, no, that's not enough. Could you do that again in the right? If you've got a room, if you got love, looking at adverts on the bus or even on the radio, and actually fosters a far more complex, and foster care, this is a professional, and I think that as people who work with foster carers, we also have to provide the training, we have to say, we expect this of you, and then if you don't come up to scratch, and that's a different story. And I feel that children also have relatives. Sometimes they do have relatives, and those relatives can be part of that experience and adding to their background. I had a pair of twins that their mom died at a very young age, but their aunties in their life. And I remember the first time she came to the review, I'm an independent review officer, she was telling them about their mother. She said, this is the person that your mother was like. And I think that often, there's relatives around, so that's important of keeping relatives, family, friends who maybe knew the children before and who can give that insight. Especially, I like to use kind of like saying that Jamaicans and Dominicans are not the same, because Dominicans speak, I think, Spanish heritage as well. So it's quite interesting, kind of like what is a young person bringing value in that, and see how you can incorporate that is very important. And finally, I guess, to pick up the role of the IRO, the independent reviewing officer, who often is the longest person around. You kind of say, if you have questions, you can think, I'm struggling, I'm not hearing, I'm not getting the help and support. That can be raised at the child's meeting. And they also have a responsibility to check and make sure that all aspects of the child's life is being addressed. And I think that's another forum that one can use as well. But the issue about training and expectations. And I think also what I would kind of like to say, foster carers, often that when you move away, take your experience of living in a diverse area and what you get, don't lose it. Just kind of think, because, and it's like for Black people's experience, because like say when Black people first came into this country, if they wanted to have their hair done, maybe the only place to go to was Shepherd's Bush, because where they were living, they couldn't get the foods, they couldn't get the stuff. So guess what they did? They went to Shepherd's Bush. So if you kind of had that experience, you think, I knew that, I'm not getting it in Guildford or somewhere else. Well, Reading, you might have to go back to Reading, because that's the reality.
Thank you. Who would like to respond?
Just picking up in your comments, I just wanted to say that openness to learning is quite key in this discourse. And I always say this, and I write it in my book as well, that there is two qualities to this humanitarian area of work that we do, social work, fostering. Two qualities: cultural sensitivity and emotional sensitivity. So when we say emotional, we're talking of that empathy for the child that comes into the care of the local authority or the care of a foster carer. Now, we want to kind of put ourselves in their shoes. And sometimes in my trainings, I would just say to participants, close your eyes for a minute and imagine yourself as a child that's just been taken from your family, everything that you know and hold there, and taken to a stranger. Nice stranger, they might be nice, the nicest foster carers, but they're still strangers. It might be the biggest house with a swimming pool, they're still strangers. So it's about kind of connecting to that loss, first of all, for these children. And sometimes these children are coming from, the highest trauma, what the trauma that, young people would come out from. But others, they still love their family, their dad, their mom, they still love their family. So we need to kind of engage with that. So when these children come into care, I think first and foremost, we want to kind of get them to settle, to come to terms with, rather than trying, those things we learned in our textbooks or in our trainings. It's about empathizing and getting them to settle, first of all, in your care, so that they can see that you care deeply before then going into all the other needs. It's about settling them in. And again, settling them in can be those little mundane things. I'll tell you, a foster carer I had once, a child that was really very resistant to coming into care. And this particular foster carer, she's an amazing foster carer, I had to literally go with this child to the foster carer to help him settle. And she had this, I'm not saying anyone should do this, but she had this array of cakes. She had the cupcakes, she had this, I'd never seen anything like that. The boy was resistant because he was coming to, he was mixed race, and he was coming to a white carer, and I think he wanted to go to someone from his culture, but because of, circumstances, we can't always provide that. But this foster carer showed in her innermost being that she cared about this child that was coming to her, and she had this array of cakes, and then as soon as the boy walked in, she kind of knelt on the floor and said she wanted to get to his level, and she said, I've been waiting for you. I've heard these good things about you, and immediately I just saw a smile from that boy's face, and that was how the connection started. I'm happy to say that this placement that was supposed to, this fostering placement that was supposed to be for a short while, is ongoing as we speak. Special guardianship, university, but still together. But that little first day encounter is very important.
Thank you, Vivian. Anyone else want to come back?
I think I just wanted to echo your point about IROs and just picking up IROs, and they play such an important role, don't they, for our children. And sometimes it's about that trusted relationship, and it's not always because the social worker might be new, foster carer might be new, but that IRO, that journey of the child, sometimes that IRO is there, and I think sometimes we just need to think about, the role they play, and maybe playing a little bit more of a bigger role, because they know the child, don't they, inside and out sometimes, as opposed to, unfortunately, the way our system is, lots of different social workers for children, but the IRO, sometimes it's that. And I was just thinking, just reflecting really about, how do IROs play a bigger role for children, really?
I think that's a really good point. I think back to the bit that we were talking about earlier about the caretaking of information. IROs are those amazing caretakers often, aren't they? The kind of constants who hold lots of information about siblings, aunties, uncles, birth parents, the network that sometimes can get lost if we don't do that caretaking of information properly. Also, just thinking about what you were saying, made me think about when we're assessing carers, are we checking that foster carers are confident, courageous, willing, able to facilitate spending time with family? Do we really make sure that we really know that about all of our carers all the time? And if carers have got any barriers or any worries or any issues as to why they can't do that, what are we doing about that? Are we kind of proactively saying, this is part of your role, you absolutely need to facilitate, you need to enable, you need to take this child, this young person, so they get to see all of the people that they're allowed to see, that they want to see, that they're choosing to see, that they need to see. How are we doing that? I think we've got a couple more questions. There's one there, and I saw someone else. Oh,
3 at the back and then 2 in...
Right, I better do a better job of sharing and move on quick. Okay.
Good morning. My name's Monica. I work with Diane in Hackney. My question is, there's a room full of people here that I would define as a coalition of the willing. So there's lots of people that want to be courageous, that want to do more, want to do the best that they can possibly do. But my question is to the anti-racist lead practitioners is that how do we ensure that actually the Black care experience remains on the agenda and we are working proactively to changing that experience and not allowing this to be conflated with other issues? I'd really like to understand some of the steps that you've taken, some of the positive outcomes you've experienced implementing, kind of taking these anti-racist steps and making sure that this is front and center, because it is a daily challenge. We, as local authorities, are working with less and having to do more. So I think it's unanimous in this room that we all believe that this is important, but there are many people involved in this system. And how do we ensure, and in your experience, how have you achieved those positive outcomes with individuals within the system that haven't believed it's as important as we do?
Thank you. I'm going to take that to Antonia first,
Yeah,
if that's okay.
no, that's no problem. Thank you. Really, really important question. So I work in Essex, which is a predominantly white county. It's also the second largest in the UK. So in terms of diversity, it's very, very much different to London and the other neighbouring counties. So something that Essex has done is actually named anti-racist practice as part of the senior leadership team. So they've actually developed and created this role to be a standalone role that actually names race. They've also put it at senior service manager level so that it stays on the agenda. That the level that they put it at allows influence upwards, so directors towards our other service managers and also towards our practitioners. It allows us to amend key documents such as the IRO sheet. It actually names anti-racist on the sheet now. Things like creating learning spaces, ensuring that we have subgroups as part of the Children in Care Council that actually names a space for black children to come and learn about their culture and identity. Things like putting a strategy in place to ensure that we're looking at our leadership. So how diverse are our leadership? Currently, we don't have diversity at each level. So we want to actually name it as part of the strategy. We are, in 5 years' time, going to ensure that we have more diversity at every level. In terms of our workforce, we're looking at how our black staff are being managed, because we know that there's so much richness when you have that competence within the workforce. So how are we ensuring that we're retaining staff and valuing their opinions when they come to the table? We're also looking at our policies and procedures, so actually creating an anti-racist practice policy that names the ethnic data. At the moment, the child information system that we use, Mosaic, groups all children together, so you have Black/African/Caribbean, but as Daryl mentioned, there's so much nuances between being black, so we want to ensure that our data is really crystal clear so that we can understand who we're serving. And also we're looking at practice, which is the heart of what we do, so creating thinking tools that actually say, how do you identify racially, so that when social workers go out to practice, they're able to have the confidence to ask the question. A lot of people are actually afraid to ask somebody about their race because they don't want to be called racist, but that discomfort is getting in the way of change. So we want to actually ensure that our social workers are equipped and that they know that they can come back into a learning space that says, I really struggled at that home visit. Can you help me? Can I learn from you about how I can approach it better next time? Those are just a few examples about how we're keeping it on the agenda in Essex at the moment.
Thank you.
Gosh, Monica, really good question. I think it's what we do locally. I think it's what we do nationally. And I think it's about policy change, legislation change. Since the death of George Floyd, how many local authorities now have diversity and inclusion leads? That's got to be a good thing, right? We are making inroads. We've got to make inroads. But it was your point about representation.
Yeah.
Gosh, you look at most local authorities, senior managers are still white, male predominantly. We've got to make a difference in that space. How do we do it? It's about interviewing, it's about ensuring we're all culturally competent. But I want to see people like me. I want to see senior managers looking like me, not just in my local authority, but different local authorities. Essex. I'd love to see representation in Essex more. So I think that's key in terms of representation, policy change. What we're doing in Hackney is fantastic. I think lots of different local authorities are doing different things, but it's got to make a difference. And we've got to say to ourselves, and so what?
Yeah.
The so what question afterwards. What are we doing? Is it making a difference for our black care experienced children? It has to. I think we're doing little things, but in terms of getting policy change, you talked about the Children Act 1989, 2004. We've got to make differences there. It's got to come from the political will. It's got to come from government, and our government's in a brilliant place right now. Without being facetious, I am being facetious. And so it's got to start from there. Because otherwise, what difference are we making?
I think for me, we've all got parts to play in this discourse, every one of us, and we're talking about promoting diversity here. And I applaud what Essex is doing, I really do. And actually, I spoke to you not so long ago because I'm trying to import what Essex is doing into West Sussex. So West Sussex is a predominantly white county as well. And I remember when I first joined many years ago, I looked around and I said to them, where are all the black people here? But we are slowly but surely trying to do something about that. And I'm happy to say that the role that I'm in, I effectively advocated the role of an EDI lead in West Sussex. We didn't have it before last August. And I think we have got, so in our individual little roles, whatever we're doing, I think we need to kind of be speaking out about anti-racism policies, about diversity. So when you sit in your role in senior management and you've sat in that role for about 10 years and you have not seen any filter of diversity, you can as well ask questions, because a lot of the times black people or people from the ethnic diverse backgrounds are the ones that ask the questions. But actually we need our colleagues who have the privilege to ask questions and say, hang on a second, we've been doing this for ages and ages, we need to filter in some diversity. How do we do that? Okay, so I think there's a role for each and every one of us to play around them. Yeah.
Definitely. Just to add as well, we want to also go back to the social work foundations. Why did we actually become social workers? Why did we actually do the degrees? So if we're not naming, race as part of our social work journey, then we're not doing what we signed up to do. We're not accomplishing that social justice that we were taught. So I always, ask people, let's go back to when we had our backpacks on and we were in those lectures and we were learning about all these theories, what inspired us to actually come into this field? And if we're not holding true to the foundations, then we've compromised along the way, or the system has influenced us. So we have to always hold true to those values, I think, as well.
Really important to bring it back to that. Why did we come into this work? If this is the work we're in, why did we come into it? So another question?
It wasn't necessarily a question, but more just a comment. So I'm a social worker, but I'm currently working for a research organisation, and I've also done advocacy. And it's really just to kind of just remind us that advocacy is so important for children and young people, just to ensure that their voices are being heard. During statutory visits, children and young people are spoken to, but in terms of having their voices heard in meetings, and just in terms of their care plan and pathway plan, it's so important to just make sure that they are supported to have their voice heard and to just understand their life experiences and help them to make decisions daily and what they choose to eat, choose to wear. Those little things make such a big difference when so much choices have been removed from them and it's been made by the adults in their life who are professionals. Just in regards to advocacy, really important.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to pick up on that, the voice of the child. I like that. That is what we work to in social care. We say it a lot, we write about it a lot, but a lot of the times I think we don't drill in, we don't. And these children, by goodness, they will tell you stories that will blow your mind if you ask and listen. Some of these children that come into care have lived way more than some adults that are looking, the social workers, the foster carers. You see an 11-year-old that has been through what a 40-year-old adult has never been through. But how do we know that? It's when we drill in slowly, we get to know, we get to find out this information that will then help us work with them. So the voice of the child, we cannot underestimate that. They might not tell us in the beginning, they might not tell us in the middle, they might tell us in the end, but be open and be willing to hear.
And sorry, can I add to that? Because that's a very valid point. And in terms of being a foster carer, we have the time to have those deeper conversations with children. But having spoken to some of the children that I've cared for in the past, there's been a kind of recognition that, and I know it's easy to bash social workers, and that's not what I'm trying to say, but in terms of social workers creating the space and time to have those conversations with those children as well, and specifically in terms of black social workers, male and female, really kind of promoting their own cultural identity, and children seeing that they are confident in their blackness and sharing their black experience with those children, and opening up those kind of conversations with them, spending time having those deeper explorations goes a long way.
Thank you. And just to come on from that, when Daryl was preparing for today, you spoke to one of the young people that you used to care for. And I think it's that, isn't it? Are we taking the time to do that? Are we going back? Are we checking? Are we doing it in the moment? Are we checking afterwards and saying, what could we have done better? And, and holding our hands up if we need to. Have we not done enough? And if we haven't done enough, tell us, help us. Make sure that we can improve and keep improving.
Yes, that was an interesting conversation to have. So that was a child that came into my care. She came into care with her. Can I spend 2 minutes talking about that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. I've been foster carer for 15 years. 14 years ago, I had 2 children placed with us. It was our first placement, a 1-year-old and a 16-year-old. It was a sibling group of 4, so the sibling group was split because 4 children to 1 placement is going to be difficult. So we had the 2 boys and 2 girls. We had the 2 girls, a 1-year-old and a 16-year-old. So completely different needs. We're still caring for the 1-year-old 14 years later. A 16-year-old stayed with us for 2 years and then moved into semi-independence. She's coming to my home today, so she's still a part of our lives, and she now has a child, so life, is wonderful. So in preparation for this, I went back and I had a conversation with her, and she was, I had to take some things on the chin. She was very open and transparent with me, and it was a difficult conversation, but she said they were brought to the UK from Nigeria and lived in a part of the country that was not diverse at the time, and then came to London. So what she recognized was, and what lots of children that I've cared for, and I'm sure this story is relevant for other children, I'm trying not to ramble on, is that many of the children that are in care, black children, are brought from the Caribbean and brought from parts of Africa to the UK. Many of these children, when they're in the Caribbean and in Africa, or parts of Africa, they're not thinking about their culture and their identity within those contexts, because they're just living their lives. Mm. They only realize that they have a culture, that they have an identity when they're brought to the UK and they become the minority. So we need to recognize the impact that has on many children that have been brought to the UK and experience that. The young person who's now 30 said that when she came to the UK, her blackness was otherness. Mm. She wasn't thinking, she most probably didn't, blackness wasn't even a concept when she was in Nigeria. She was just living her life. And these are the many layers that, and things that children of color have to experience. She realized that she had an accent. She didn't have an accent in Nigeria, so when she comes to the UK and she starts speaking, that she realized that actually the other black children don't speak like me. So there was lots of shedding going on for her. I have to assimilate, I have to conform if I want to fit in. And we need to, I feel like I've gone off on a tangent, but what the conversation made me realize is that the cultural identity of these children are multidimensional. Her experience, she's black Nigerian, she comes to Britain, she wants to assimilate into black British culture, she comes and lives with black Caribbean foster carers. So her identity, it becomes complex, and we need to recognize the complexity of these identities in our work as foster carers, as professionals, as social workers, as service leaders, and understand that it's a complicated task we have, but we need to recognize that.
Thank you, Daryl. I think we've got a couple more questions. Yeah, okay.
Good morning, panel. My name is Deborah. I also work in Hackney with Diane. One of the things that we've been able to focus on quite intentionally in Hackney is the racial trauma, really focusing on trauma. And my question to the panel is, as part of that black care experience, and actually one of the areas that I'm so passionate about is for black children in the criminal justice system that are in the care system, and the multiple traumas that they experience around racism, etc., etc. How do we attend to that? And especially if they are with foster carers who may be also dealing with their own traumas as a black parent, but then how do we ask white foster carers to understand and harness that and support our black children having a positive care experience?
Again, I think it's about being bold and speaking up for justice for our young people. So one of the pieces of work I've been doing is to go to the youth justice, restorative justice, to talk to the staff in that team about what it is about adultification of our young people. So we draw the awareness of the staff to what is happening. And one of the ways I do that is to use practical examples. So I don't shy away from using George Floyd, for example, to raise awareness. So one of the ways I've been having these discussions is to take tragic, incidents, to kind of reflect with staff. Okay, to reflect, really drilling to see that this is actually happening, because if we don't understand that this is happening, apart from the videos that go viral, but there are lots of cases where young people are adultified, they're treated like adults, and from my research and my informal research, not formal research, so I'm thinking, do we feel threatened when we see people from the black and minority ethnic background or global majority? So it's about having those reflective discussions with colleagues, not to shy away from them. In West Sussex at the moment, we've got anti-racism forums, which run 6 weekly, and we don't shy away from using examples, happening in the society. We go to Canada, we pick examples. We go to America, we pick examples, and we talk about those examples, and we allow people to give their feel. So we're not teaching people, we're hoping that people will be able to reflect on the society, and reflect on what's going on, and come up with those solutions that would help them.
Just to also add, so I have experience of working in youth offending services, and I think it's really about naming race in things like pre-sentence reports. So oftentimes when I was on frontline practice, I would actually have to write, Your Honour, so-and-so stands before you today as a 6-foot black boy, but actually he might not have eye contact with you because he's actually got learning difficulties, he's nervous. Have to really, really break it down so that the judge understands, because we know that we don't have representation in magistrates and judges as well, and we also know we have disparities regarding remand. So really having, that sound report that actually breaks down all of those things. Also ensuring that we're working with our partners in a very unified way. So you might have the yacht worker, the youth offending team worker, and the social worker. How are the plans aligned? Where are the strengths in each resource? How can we work together as partners to ensure that it's not two separate young people, but it's the same young person, but working in unison with our partners. Also challenging our leadership. So how are we working with superintendents, the police system, to ensure that we're addressing the data? We're seeing that, black boys are being stopped 5 times or 6 times more than anybody else. Why is that okay? What are we doing? What are the police plans and their race action plan? How are all of these plans working together as a unified approach rather than working in silos? Because we often see that research says that we're not talking to each other enough. So it's about keeping that conversation alive, I think, as well.
Thank you. We've got about 5 minutes left, and I think did anyone else want to come back on that point? No, I think we've got a couple more questions. We're probably not going to manage all the questions, but we are around today, so feel free to...
Sorry, can I just really quickly make a point? So I work in social work education, and today it's been really marvellous to hear all the amazing practice that is going on. To have it all brought together is really wonderful. And I was just wondering, is it now time to have a practice model that enables both white and black practitioners to come to at least a level, not the best level, but a starting point in terms of their practice? around Black and other minority children, because what we've got are pockets of good practice, but actually what we need is a level of good practice, and I was just wondering what you thought about that.
Can I take it? Can I take that?
Thank you for that, and you'll see that there's some smiles around the room because I think there's some energy and enthusiasm for that suggestion. Diane, I'm going to come to you first.
So yes, absolutely, it's time to think about a model. My colleagues are here in Hackney. We have the STAR approach, which stands for Systemic, Trauma-Informed and Anti-Racist. And that approach is about making sure we understand what that means. We want the STAR approach for our children. We want the workforce to be working in terms of this STAR approach. It's challenging though, because what we need is our white allies along with us along that journey, because we can't do it ourselves. What I don't want to do is constantly be telling my story all the time. That trauma of having Black practitioners, the workforce constantly being traumatized. We need that joint space, and that's not always easy to do, but it's a journey we're starting in Hackney. Come back in 18 months' time and I'll tell you how it's gone. But I think you're right about a model. I'd love to see a model that's unified, a model that everybody works to, and that's what I talked about, policy change, legislation change, led by government, because this agenda's not, this is everybody's business. This just can't be our agenda because of the death of George Floyd, because of Child C, because of that awful incident last week with that girl in that school. How do we stop that? So we need something. I agree, we do need something. Whether Hackney's going to get it right, I don't know. We're going to make mistakes along the way, of course we are, but at least the agenda's there. We've got, certainly in Hackney, we've got the political will. We've got people wanting to, senior leaders are saying yes, yes, yes. So we're going to try.
Thank you.
Hello, can I pose a question, please?
Sorry. Did you?
Hello? Yeah.
Can I just come back before your question, if that's
Thank
okay?
you.
Can I just come back on that model? I wanted to kind of signpost you that there is a basic model, and I'm happy to say that I've authored that model and I'm trying to develop it. So in terms of talking about diversity and becoming culturally competent, if you do have the chance, find the diversity acrostic poem. It's a basic reflective poem that would help you to engage with diversity and become culturally sensitive, which then leads to cultural competence. So I wanted to signpost you to that. You can speak to me after the session.
Thanks, Vivian.
Thank you. Just want to say thank you to the panel today for being here. It's a Saturday, and I know that people had other places to be, but the fact that we're all here says a lot, that, we're all here. So thank you. Somebody's already touched on my first point, which was adultification, but the second one is about being aspirational for children, not just Black children, but all children. I'm an IRO, and I know that, Diane, you've already alluded to the importance of the role, but actually I find that oftentimes social workers are not aspirational for children in their placements with the babies, and I'm very passionate about matching children with regards to adoption and long-term permanency. I'm seeing people saying, I think they know about Black issues. Well, actually, you're placing a child here who's going to live here for the next maybe 17 years of their life or the rest of their childhood. You need to know what you're doing when you're matching children. Our children deserve to see people who look like them, who sound like them, and who know how to love them. My question is, what do you think we can do to ensure that the system is more aspirational for our children, from infancy right up to yacht to, care leavers? That's my question.
Thank you, and a really good question, I think, to end on, being aspirational. Daryl, shall I come to you first? Is that all right?
Yes, I think we need to have a significant drive for recruiting more Black foster carers and Black adopters. I know there's work being done in churches across the country, I'm aware of specific pieces of work, but I think more work around getting those foster carers and working through some of the cultural barriers to fostering, and especially adoption. I think adoption for the black community is a challenge for a range of kind of historical reasons, but I think maybe some more information providing and kind of exploration of those kind of myths and misconceptions around adoption would go a long way in terms of bringing those families forward.
Thanks, Harold. Diane, were you going to come in?
Gosh, it's a big question, isn't it, in terms of being aspirational? Where's the passion? Because you've got to have the passion to do this, haven't you? You've got to have the passion to want to make a difference for our children. And you're right, not just black children, all children in the system. I think it's incumbent on all of us, isn't it, to make that difference? You know, yes, professionally, we get paid to do a job, but there's that bit about what are we doing outside of that? You know, I'm on a couple of forums where I'm trying to recruit more black adopters. The recruitment drive for black adopters. When I see, is it attractive to me? Would I want to adopt? No. So I'm doing some work jointly with Haringey around how do we attract more black adopters? Because I think it starts from there. It starts from Daryl in terms of being foster carers. But the passion, gosh, the will has got to be there, hasn't it, to want to do that, to want to make a difference. I think the way we write about children is so important because what you write, that narrative is so important because it follows that child. So language is so important, and we've got to get that right as well.
Thank you. I think we need to wrap up. Is that right?
Hello, yes. Can you hear me? My name's Kaylee. I'm a consultant social worker in Hackney as well.
Just quickly from Hackney's here today.
Quick challenge and question. My challenge is that the way that we orientate black children really matters. So I've heard, black children be referred to as ethnic minorities as well as global majority this morning. And I think that the way that we think about black children really affects the service that they receive from us. So black children are going to continue to be othered if they are minoritized and racialized and seen as a minority. Those of us that have a caring investment in black children need to commit to rigorously searching our social graces. Everyone that's not a social worker won't know what social graces are, but our own ethnic heritage, where we live, how we were brought up, all of those things that intersect to make our identity, we all have to commit every day to think about that so we can recognise that in the children that we're supporting. Also, we have an opportunity to support black business. There are so many delivery services since the pandemic started where you can get black hair care products, yam, okra, cornmeal porridge, ethnic foods delivered to your house. You don't have to travel, you just have to look. You've got the Black Pound store, you've got resources online, so I definitely would challenge us all to be kind of thinking about where we're spending our money. My question is, we know that black children are more likely to come into the care system because black parenting is pathologized. So ultimately, I think we would all prefer for children not to come into care unnecessarily. So my question is, how do we equip practitioners to have a better understanding of all of the things that have gone into the way that people that are racialized and as black in society parent, so that we get a better service and so that ultimately they are supported, traumas are healed, and black children can stay with their actual families and within their networks.
That's a great question. It's also a really big question, and I think what we haven't touched on particularly is thinking about kinship care, which feels like that's part of that story, doesn't it? We haven't really gone there today, and we could, or we haven't gone there so far, I should say. I'm just wondering if anyone wants to come back.
Gosh, Kaylee, it's a really big question, isn't it? And I think in answering it, it's the challenge is there, isn't it? And I think we can all do different things and are doing different things. But I think the challenge is about, for me, it's the onset when we're doing assessments right at the beginning and understanding at that point. We're going into people's homes. What are we saying? What are we doing? One of my experiences when I was a social worker is, I would go into a home and a social worker would come back and say, "Oh, it smells. They were cooking saltfish." So it's about breaking down those stereotypes, which are really hard to do, but prior to them coming into care, Katie, prior to children getting adopted, it's about what are we doing at the onset, and it is about changing practice. Do I have all the answers? Do we have all the answers? Absolutely not. But we have to learn, don't we? We have to open to learn, think about reflection and how we do that. and it's not easy, Kayla, but yes, the challenge is about us, isn't it, and how we affect change.
And I think as practitioners, we've got an absolute duty, haven't we? Like you've just said, to notice if we're making assumptions, if we're feeling that we're unsure about something or even uncomfortable, we need to be courageous. We need to stop. We need to pause. We need to go and seek out the information. Why did that situation feel unusual or uncomfortable? That's my stuff. I need to own that as a practitioner, and I'm going to go and learn and find out and work out how I can think about that or work with that situation differently. We really need to, we've gone over, haven't we? Okay. Yeah. Just quickly, Vivian, yeah.
No, I will summarize quickly. I just wanted to say that I want to take us back to the basics. Someone mentioned aspiration for our young children, and young people. What is our aspiration? We will have to go back to the basics. Why did we come into social work, social care? It is not just a profession. It's a profession like no other. It's a humanitarian profession. It's a profession in which we signed up to promote social change, social justice, anti-oppressive, anti-discriminatory practice. I would say anti-racism as well. So we need to connect to the reasons why we came into this field. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you to an amazing panel. Can we have a big round of applause, please? For all your questions. Sorry for those of you that didn't get a chance to ask your question. We're now going to be moving on to, you're going to be moving into some groups.
Okay, so we're going to go into some groups to talk more about cultural competency and to talk together in your group as to what cultural competency includes. So you're going to sit together and talk about what do you think should be included under the heading of cultural competency. Is that clear? Yep. Right. So everybody who got when you came today, you got a card, a colourful card with a number on it. Brilliant. If you had a card that had number 1 on it, please go to that section. If you got the card with the number 2 on it, could you also go to that section? So group number 1 will be at the front, group number 2 will be at the back. Card number 3 at the front, card number 4 at the back here, card number 5 at the front here, card number 6 at the back here, card number 7 at the front here, card number 8 at the back here, and if you got cards 8, 9 or 10, card number 8 should please join group number 1, card number 9, please join group number 2. Is that okay? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And anybody who didn't get a card, you can go to whatever group you want to go to. Yeah. Okie doke. So I'm going to start with this group. Who's your feedback person? And we just want 1 point because we've got to be really swift. But just to let everybody know, we are going to write an evaluation report from this, and everything that we've written is going to be in that report. So today is not just a day and we forget about it. There's lots more that will be happening after today. So even if you don't get to talk about everything that's on your flip chart papers, it will be in our evaluation report and documented and sent out to everybody who's here. Is that okay? All right? Okay, cool. So, spokesperson from this, listen, I like vibes, yeah? So I want you to cheer for your groups. So, this group, cheer for your group. Who's your spokesperson? And just give us 1 point of what you think cultural competency should include. 1 point.
Really
Can you please stand? Come on now. Woo! Yeah, confidence.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, so we're group 7, and we were asked to, look at what cultural competency should include and what it looks like. I mean, we had a very lively discussion, and we have a list of 14.
So give us your best one. Just one. Yeah, just one. Your best one. Everybody signposting, just choose your best one that you want to throw in the ring. Okay. And then we're going to put them up for you over here so everyone can see.
Yeah. Okay, so I think unanimous decision. We have decided that cultural curiosity needs to be the #1 ingredient.
Brilliant.
For all areas of kinship care, social care, and foster care, because you know, everyone needs to want to know and want to understand.
Yes.
And that obviously will then inform how we go about finding the solution.
Brilliant. Well done. Thank you, group number 7. Cara, if you could put their flip chart paper up to on. Group number 1. Big up yourselves. Okay, who is your spokesperson? And give us your best one. Excuse me. Could you use your mic, please, as well? Oh, can someone help our beautiful lady? Brilliant.
What we felt was to have conversations about making relational risk and taking risks and being curious about children and families. So
that's brilliant. Wow, thank you. Thank you. So, cultural curiosity is absolutely perfect. So, going to the group at the back. What number are you? Number 6. Let's hear from you. Woo! All right, give us one main point.
So cultural competence should equip and support children to equip and support children to deal with racial bullying, racial stereotyping, microaggressions, intercultural practices and racial trauma,
Right.
And it should be a thread that is underpins all services, children's services, health, education, everything.
So across the board. Fantastic. Give them a round of applause. Okay. Group number 2, big up yourselves. All right. Let's hear from you. Have you got the mic? And could you please stand, whoever you are, so we can see you? You're hiding there on the floor. Don't work. Woo! Well done.
Hi. We decided on recognising the lack of support outside London because it's very centralised. So what we wanted to do was build a partnership between boroughs outside of London areas to work with one another. And by doing this, we understand the child's narrative better by building a basic profile around the cultural background and the needs that the child would need to ensure that. Because let's say you're in Devon, for example, and you don't have access to plantain or yam or whatever, like developing a relationship with the borough that does, and then sending a little care package or something along those lines where like you can ensure that, yeah, you might not be in London, but there's more outside of that, and the child will still need that care regardless.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah. I would agree with that because we have, within the local authority, within children's social care, everybody works on their own. They work in silo. Nobody crosses the barrier. It's almost like the local authorities are in competition, but I know you're not, but it feels like that sometimes. Like if that child gets transferred to, I don't know, to Ilford, and you're in the Redbridge area, well, they're in your borough, you need to sort them out. Well, they're going to East, well, they're in your borough. It should be a family, a corporate parenting family organisation that takes care of everybody, irrespective of what borough. So we need to join hands a bit more, I think. Yeah. Okay, group 2, 1, 2, 3. Group number 3, big up yourselves. Okay, and who's your beautiful spokesperson? Do you have the microphone in your hand? You do now. Let's go. Yes, please.
Hello.
Yeah.
For group 3, we believe that for cultural competency, we should include specialised training and keeping it at the forefront across all departments, so in schools, for foster carers, in children's homes, and having the young people's voice come first. We've had our lovely young person here, and we've heard his ideas and his thoughts, and I think that as an organisation and what we're doing here, we should always include their voice, and regardless if we are doing confidential things to safeguard them, we do have a duty of care, and their voice should always be heard.
Brilliant, fantastic. The voice of the child is always important. And I like the bit where cultural competency isn't just for social care, social work practices across the board, schools, everybody, because we go to every single place, right? Okay. Group number 4, big up yourselves. Okie doke, so who's going to be your beautiful spokesperson? And please could you stand from the Fostering Network? Woo, give her a hand.
That's quite a big thing to live up to now. So I think the one that we maybe will go for is the ability to have respectful challenge, the ability to question, having the confidence and the right skill set to question in the right way, at the right time, with the right motive.
Brilliant. Perfect. Round of applause for that. That was to the point. Okay. What other group? Is there one more group I haven't spoken to? What number are you again?
Number 5.
Oh, I haven't spoken to you guys either. Oh, so you're a subgroup. Okay, brilliant. Can I come to my subgroup? Subgroup, put your hands up and... Yes. Subgroup, make some noise for yourselves. Okay, confidence, building confidence. Okay, let's go. Mic check, mic check.
Mic check.
Please stand up. Thank you. Thank you very much.
So we were talking about how you have to adapt to different environments, and it's sometimes quite difficult, but yeah, it gets like that sometimes.
Yes, it does, yeah.
We also discussed cultural competency being learned by the children as well, because we move around quite a lot. You might have different foster carers, people you live in your house that you might not be comfortable with, or you might not even have the information on. So it's just about having that information and told in advance and learn.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That is brilliant. Wow, that is fantastic. And we didn't even think about that we move around so many times that everybody else in that house needs to be culturally competent, not just the foster carers, but their children too, and the rest of their family. Okay, we're going to talk about that in this afternoon. Okay, group number
5.
Number 5. DJ.
I've got one of those
Group
voices.
number 5 in the house. Big up yourselves. Round of applause.
Right.
Okay, let's go.
So as a group, I think we recognise that cultural competency, you don't arrive at being culturally competent. It's a journey. So, and in that journey, lots of learning about self and the need to be anti-racist and understanding the experiences of care, the care experience. So on that journey, utilising reflective spaces, relinquishing your need to be right, but also evidencing reflective practice.
Brilliant. Reflective practice is really key. And one thing I want to add into the cultural competency mix is the consistent reviewing. It's not a one-time thing that you are culturally competent. I think it should be reviewed on a regular basis, because things can slide and things can rise up, and nobody's accountable for those things that slide and rise up. So it has to be a continuous reviewing, continuous professional development. Something like that needs to happen all the time to keep you on track, because the world is changing and the things that black kids are going through are changing. So we've got to move with the times. So that has got to be a part of the list as well. Thank you very, very, very much. Give yourselves a round of applause. Okay, if you can hear me, wave your hands. Woo! Perfect, perfect. Everybody enjoyed your lunch? We like to feed. You're welcome. Okay, cool. Just to, do you know what? I really forgot to do something at the very beginning, and everyone keeps asking me, so what's your name? So My name's Judith Denton, and I'm also care experienced. And I'm the founder of the Black Care Experience. Yeah. I've got my fans outside. The Black Care Experience actually sits within my organisation called the Transformed You. So we started the Transformed You in 2013, so we're 10 years old this year. And what we do at the Transformed You, we go in and we mentor children in the care system. And the reason why I did that, because I started, long story short, I started as a TA in a school. My whole career, I went from working in the legal field, then working in banking, and then ended up as a TA in school because of redundancies and stuff. And then, but that was always my passion to work with young people, because I'm originally from Bristol. So I did a lot of, Bristol in the house. So I did a lot of youth work when I was a youngster, many, many years ago in Bristol. So that was still on my heart. So going from working in the legal world to working in the financial industry, I kind of fell into working in the schools as a TA. And I began to see some things going on, and I was like, what's this? I was like, okay, can I read, who's this child? Where are they from? And then I realized that the kids that were being misunderstood by the schools were children in the care system. And I was like, I know what to do. And so I began to mentor these kids and get them out of inclusion and back into their classrooms. And the teachers were like, well, what is it you're doing and how do you know? Because the school didn't know that I was care experienced. I was not telling them. I was just using my formula and getting these kids back into class. And then I realized I also have a business mind, that I could put this into a business. And then in 2013, I started the Transformed You, mentoring kids like me, not just black kids, but white kids, Asian kids, kids across the board, because for me, they can relate to me because I'm in the care system and they are in the care system too. They don't care what colour I am. They just want to know that I can understand what's going on in their lives, if they're in foster care, residential, kinship, whatever. So we started mentoring those children. So we're in 2 boroughs. We've done quite a lot. And we're going to be doing some more, but I'll tell you that when I'm allowed to speak about that. But we're 10 years old this year. So, and then the Black Care Experience started in 2020 because of what happened to George Floyd, and people were talking about their black experience and nobody's talking about their black care experience. So we did a bit of a research to find out what was going on with black children in the care system, and then we birthed the Black Care Experience so that we could have a voice too in this time that we're living in, because we wanted to make sure that there was a change. So that's a synopsis about me, because people were asking and I was like, oh yeah, I hadn't said that. So that's about me, okay? All right, moving on. So, what we're going to do now is hear the voice of the Black Care Experience care leavers. So, one by one, I'm going to call their names, and when I call your name, give them a round of applause, because talking about your story is not going to be easy, but they need to be supported from the ground. You okay? All right, so welcome to the stage, Matthew Page. Woo! Mana! Rebecca! And Queenie! Woo! And my co-host started a Blackening Care group in the 1980s. So we stand on the shoulders of greatness today. So welcome to this stage. I feel really emotional.
We all have you. Look what you've done.
So welcome to this stage, David Akinsanya. Before we start, you guys are absolutely amazing. I want you to know that. And after today, just make sure that your story counts, because there are little kids that look just like you who need us to help them move forward, okay? Right, so that's my little encouragement to you.
first of all, I think we should just say in our own words, one by one, who we are and how we fit into the picture, what our experience was. So I'm going to start with Matthew.
Hello everybody, my name's Matthew. I'm here today to talk to you about my lived experience. I grew up in a foster family, a white foster family, from the age of 3 to 18, and most recently I've become a foster parent myself.
So hi everyone, so I'm Anna Gonzora, so I am a previous care leaver myself, as we all are here. So today I've come to obviously share my experience and also my knowledge around working on the ground with young people in youth services and stuff like that. So yes, I grew up in foster placement, I've been in children's homes, I've grown up with family, away from my parents, so yeah, so a lot to cover today, but yeah, I'll hand over to Rebecca.
Hello everyone, I'm Rebecca Olyinka. I am care experienced. I grew up in a private fostering arrangement, so basically, if anyone doesn't know that, because it's not always widely known, I grew up where it was a privately arranged between my mother and my foster mother, and she was a white foster mother, and I was with her from a baby until I was about 10 years old, and then I went back to my mum. I am also a social worker, not working in children's, but working in adults, and I am also a writer as well.
Hi everyone, my name is Queenie. First and foremost, I am a human being. As a believer, I believe I'm a child of God, but I'm also a young black woman before I'm a care leaver. As of recently, I was the head of marketing for a youth charity, but now I am self-employed as a spatial designer.
So, question. Do you feel as though your culture and identity was seen as promoted and celebrated by those who cared for you? And anyone can answer this question.
Shall I start that one? Yeah. For me, as I said before, I grew up with a white family in Kent for 16 years, and my blackness, I would say, wasn't really celebrated in any shape or form. And I've had this conversation with you guys before. I told you, I think I told you the story of my foster mum coming into the room once and turning on my TV in the bedroom, and it was the Soul Train music show. And she said, "Oh, I think you might like this." And she kind of left me there with this music blaring. And I remember looking at the screen thinking, "Oh, there's black people singing, but what has that got to do with me? What is the connection there?" And so, yeah, for me that was one of the only memories I've got of being in care in a white family and having any connection with my blackness.
So can I ask you the same? Because I was privately fostered for a little while. Was there any cultural influence at all in your foster home?
So I was very fortunate to have a great foster mum. She was white, but I felt like she loved me as her own. It's difficult because she passed away a long time ago, and even to this day, it's still really hard. But she really did try. I don't think she always got it right, but I remember her doing my hair with like rosemary oil. Where I was living, I grew up, well, when I was living with her, it was Jaywick Sands in Essex, and the nearest town was Clacton-on-Sea, but there wasn't like any kind of Afro-Caribbean shops or anything like that.
Not in Colchester, right?
No. So there wasn't anything like that, but she really tried. I remember my mum used to come and visit me with my siblings as well, and my mum would bring pots of jollof rice, and you know, when I'd go back and see my mum, I would have like ground rice and okra, because my parents are Nigerian. And I remember one time she tried to make ground rice for me, but it didn't work out well because she made it, but she didn't have the okra in the stew, so it tasted so different. But yeah, she did try, but it was really, really tough because there was no support really at all.
Was that the same for you as well?
So for myself, my first placement was actually in a residential home, and what I found was like going into the residential homes, and I'm sure like many young people will be able to identify that have been there, it's very hard to build your cultural identity because there's so many of you in that home and you're all eating the same meals that's going to be cooked on that day, or you're cooking your own separate meals. So I think there wasn't that real kind of like sitting down with you and helping you understand your culture in terms of the workers themselves as well, which I think is really important for us to kind of like think about, okay, the workers in that place, like should we be getting them to learn more about those different cultures so that they are teaching the children that. And then when I went into my foster placements, so I had 2 foster placements, both were Caribbean, and what I found was that I lost my African culture and I lost my sense of identity in terms of being an African, and I felt sometimes it was almost like you felt a bit ashamed to be African because it was like you weren't seeing yourself reflected, so it felt like, oh, I must hide my Africanness, and I almost like adopted like a Caribbean culture. So like now I will cook like Caribbean food, like I cook African food now, just so you all know. Yeah. But coming out of care, it was a lot of like knowing how to cook Caribbean foods. I listened to a lot of like dance hall, bashment, stuff like that. So even now people will be like, sometimes I think you're Jamaican, sometimes I think you're Caribbean. I'm like, no, I'm actually African, I'm Congolese. So I think, yeah, even in terms of thinking about, how do we still continue to promote that when you are placing a black child with another black family? How are they going to promote that child's separate identity, which I felt was missing?
I remember once being given an Asian social worker and being told that the Asian social worker would be able to help me, but didn't have any understanding of African culture at all. Yeah. Was it a similar experience for you, Queenie?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I failed to mention that I was also placed with a white foster carer. And I mean, till this day, I call her mum. Like when we're definitely out shopping, people definitely probably think I'm weird. But like, she was incredible. And obviously, as a child, I was 5 years old at the time. You don't sort of think about those things. You don't see. I don't want to say this in an insensitive way, but you don't sort of see the colour of your skin if you were given or showered a lot of love, and that was what I was fortunate enough to have received from my carer. And only sort of later on in life where you kind of get an understanding of the world that you start to realise a lot of things. But I was blessed to have someone who just tried her best, and she'd ask her friends like, how do I do this, and sort of kind of challenged the sort of status quo, I guess, or the narrative that the system sort of had a part to play at the time, where it was, okay, we're going to match you with the colour of your skin, and so would send us on a Sunday to a Jamaican family, forgetting that I was born in Zimbabwe. And so, very interesting experience, but yeah.
I was going to say that all of you have said there was lacking of something. Did any of you find somebody whilst you were still young that you could identify with who kind of helped you? Do you know what I mean, in your journey to discover yourself?
I would probably say like my foster mom. So even though she was Caribbean, like what I found was I didn't lose my identity of being black. So even though I felt I lost my identity of being African, I didn't lose that part of me being black. So it was like my last foster placement. As soon as I got there, the first day that I moved in, she was like, okay, we're going to the hairdressers, because she realised that I'd been putting these £1 gels all in my hair. My hair's breaking out. So she was like, no, we're going to the hairdresser. So, it was like immediately teaching you those lessons about self-care, looking after yourself in the ways of like even thinking about your mental health. So she started putting me into like groups and like going to dance and theatre, which then you started to build that self-identity of who you were. So I felt that was really beneficial in terms of what I needed, and her like kind of keeping it real with me at times when I really needed it. That was, needed.
Somebody mentioned earlier on about how, when somebody comes here as a black person, they don't need to identify as black. But do you think it's important for us in this society to identify positively as black? So for our adult lives, does anybody want?
Well, I think for me, I've done things back to front. I think it's only now that I'm starting to identify with the black side of who I am, being brought up in a white family. So I think for me, I'm doing things the kind of wrong way round almost, but it is really important.
And how did that come about? Tell us what you did to start to identify with the black side of you.
Well, being within a white family, I had a wonderful, positive experience, I have to say that, in care. I didn't really think about the black side of me much. And last year I was 50, and I saw an advert on TV, on the internet, for a programme called DNA Family Secrets with Stacey Dooley. I don't know if anyone's seen that show. They take a bit of your DNA and they trace, if you're lucky, they have a look and see what they can find, any relatives and any backgrounds and stuff. So they accepted me onto the show, and the question I had was, where am I from? Am I Jamaican? Because I was always told my father was Jamaican. So I asked the question, am I Jamaican? And the answer come back, no, you're not. You're totally not Jamaican. You're from the Seychelles. So that, for me, ignited my journey into discovery in my blackness.
So before that, did you have no information? The only information you had was that your dad might have been Jamaican?
That was the only information I had, yeah.
Right. I mean, just as someone who's dual heritage, I'll just bring that up since we're here on that. I mean, for me, that was a similar thing, because, I'm dual heritage. And the fact that everybody was talking about black all the time. Yeah. I wanted to know where I got my blackness from. But I think for dual heritage kids, it's a bit more difficult, because we don't always know where the fathers are from. I mean, we know where our mothers are from, hopefully. So do you think it's important for us to, because it's important for us to see both sides of the family? Or do you think because we live in England, we don't need to worry about the white side?
Well, I think being dual heritage, when we were younger, for me, my own personal experience is that sometimes I wanted to hide my blackness, and on a few occasions I wanted to hide my whiteness, but I didn't know how to relate to black people. It was almost, I was almost frightened of black people growing up.
So do you think then that hearing you say you wanted to hide both sides of you, would it have helped if social care had given your adoptive mum all the information about your ethnicity, your identity, your culture and everything, and then help to help you be the man you are today? Would that have helped from the very beginning?
I think massively, yeah. It would have helped me shape my true, real identity, because I had to kind of create my own identity and kind of map it on my white foster family. I had to kind of create my own identity. So I think to have that truth and that realness at the beginning, it might have saved a lot of work.
Yes, indeed.
I was going to say, for all of us, how are any of you in contact with your natural parents? You were in contact with your natural parents?
Yes, I was in contact with my natural parents. They weren't together when I was fostered, and it was really challenging, because I'd see them at different times, and my dad would tell me stories about my mum, and my mum would tell me stories about my dad, and there was no interjection there, no filtering, because some of the things that I was told, I don't think any child should know about. I think it was way above my years, and the relationships, I mean, the best relationship I ever had was with my foster mother, I have to say, even though she wasn't my natural mum, I always called her mum as well. And, I felt really loved by her, more than I did my own family. And my parents are both deceased now. And I don't think I ever really had any kind of close attachment bond with them at all. That never happened. Even though I went back to live with my mum, there was no connection there at all.
I think this is something that comes up regularly for kids who are adopted, fostered, brought up in care, about who mum is. And mum is definitely the person who cares for you. And in our eyes, you're blind to the colour of that person. If you've got that love and that person has given you, it's the reason why fostering can work, right? And that's what's important, is about love. But what I wanted to know is, did any of you have contact with your natural parents, and was that a positive thing for you? The only reason why I'm asking is because I always had contact with my dad, who was the black one. I never had contact with my mum. And so I had a really positive, when I found out it was from Nigeria, this is before Google, I used to go to the library and found out everything I could about Nigeria, the population, the oil, the this, the that. But does it help to have, if you've got your natural parents there, does it help you to identify if they're in the picture?
And I think what David's saying is, did it help you to keep connected to your culture, identity and heritage, being able to have your family in your life? Did it help in any particular way, shape or form?
It's a really interesting question, because going back to the presence of mum has in your life, my sister and I had technically 3 mothers: birth mother, our foster mother, and our adoptive mother. And so navigating that thought process was a lot. Our birth mother is still very much alive. Our adopted mother sadly isn't, and our foster mother is. And for those who've been obviously care experience will sort of might understand this, where you almost always, even though you've come from a really long journey, you almost always want that attachment with your parent. And you always seek them out, whether it's to somebody else or you search for them. And that's definitely a challenge that I've faced, even up until most recently, where you're still searching for your parent. And so there are positive and negative sort of attributions to having that connection with your parent, because for some it might be a huge trigger point for you. And for me, it's a huge trigger point, because I'm like, yeah, I know this person really hurt me along my way in my life. However, that's still my mom at the end of the day, and almost in a toxic kind of way, we somehow still let them hurt us, but with the hope that they'll come around, they're still your mum, they love you deep down, but we also forget maybe their traumas as well, and so that's why I say that it can be a good thing, because you're connected, you know that you came from somewhere, from someone, even though maybe they didn't have the capacity to take care of you at the time, or didn't want you, whatever the experience might have been, but negative in the sense that it can have a hold on you, on your life, and it takes a whole lot of strength and courage to navigate that and manage that as you grow up.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with what you just said there as well, because I think sometimes we do have this ideal of we want our mothers to be a mother, you're supposed to look after me, you're supposed to love me, and you yearn for that love so much that it has a detrimental effect on you and your own mental health as well. And I actually remember a counsellor once saying to me, stop looking at your mother like a swan. You need to look at your mother as a duckling that will never become the swan that you want her to be. And then when I took that, and it's a lesson I tell other young people now, so you constantly say, like, yeah, don't look at that, like, look at it like this, because it was having to understand that, do you know what, this person may not change, they will not become what you want them to be, so you need to accept them for who they are, but then just continue with yourself and do what you need to do for you as well. Because when I was in care, my mum, I'm the eldest of 11 kids, so my mum has 9 children. And what I found was a lot of the time when she did come around, it was usually because it was of some benefit to her. So if I was going to come and live with her, it means that, I'm going to get a house and I'm going to get the benefits and this, that and the other. And then my foster carer really tried to push me to have that relationship. But then when she started to recognize that actually, no, this is actually having an impact on her mental health, then she said, you know what, okay, maybe start taking a step away from that and have that relationship at a distance. So now we do have a relationship with my mom. However, it is at a distance, because even with things like therapy, and you've learned so much, for example, children not being responsible for the actions of adults, because I grew up having to lie to people and say, this is my twin sister, if you see the difference between us, it's crazy. But we came to this country as siblings, and even as you were telling that story to social workers, it was almost like you wasn't being believed, and it was kind of like if we had that cultural competency to understand that families do come here with their siblings' children and say that they're their own, then you can try and listen to that child more, because by not being listened to, what it did was it just silenced you, so that whenever anything does happen, you just feel like no one's going to listen to me anyway, so let me just be quiet. So yeah, so in terms of those relationships, yeah, still have one with my mum at a distance, but relationship with my foster mum's amazing. So yeah.
Just to touch on the point that you made, Manu, in terms of social workers understanding the culturalness, if for want of a better word, of the different black cultures, what would you say how do you think social workers could benefit from knowing the different types of cultures within the black community that would help every single one of us not be cross-culturally matched and sit in a family because we look the same? How do you think social workers, foster carers, knowing that there's such a vast range of culturalness in our community would help?
I think it's really about educating ourselves as well, because sometimes we rely so much on our workplace and say, oh, my workplace is going to teach me this, my workplace is going to train me on this. But sometimes we also need to take accountability for ourselves and say, do you know what, I'm passionate about this job. I want to be more competent in my job, and I want to be able to support and enable these young people. Therefore, I'm going to take those steps to make myself well-versed in those areas as well, and not just rely on work. So I think things like that are important. Listen to your young people's voices, involving them in your training sessions. Like even today when we had the young people talking over there about going across different boroughs, was, oh my gosh, that's an amazing idea. If we didn't have you in here, we wouldn't have heard that. So really using those opportunities.
Yeah, I think you touched upon a good point there. As a foster parent myself, with limited experience at the moment, but one thing I learned quickly is to shut up. Honestly, it's to shut up and to listen, because everyone around the child thinks they've got relationships. Well, they have got relationships of sorts, but everyone thinks they know the child better than the next person, and no one actually takes a breath and a step back and listens to the child. And what I found is by doing that, the child usually knows what they want or what they need, and they're asking you they're telling you what they need,
100%, because even in my job now, sometimes you get the social workers going, so how comes they're so well behaved when they're with you and they're so bad with everyone else? And you're like, because we're listening to them, we're nurturing them, we're caring for them. That's all it is, just listen. That's all they're asking.
Queenie, do you want to touch on that? Want to answer that? I can see your foot.
Don't be quick to check the box. Because, the amount of paths and stories, negative stories that we can avoid by doing that would just go such a long way. I understand and I recognise that, especially in the times that we're living in, we're inundated, we're stressed, there's a lot of young people that need a lot of support, but we just need to do a little bit better at being attentive, listening, seeing, watching, observing, and learning from those that are in the experience or experiencing in that season. And it will just help us, not just to do a job, but to support and build up the next generation, right? Like my sister said something really powerful one time, where she was like, as a social worker, your role might be a 9 to 5, but my life isn't a 9 to 5. And it's like, I go on. And so what do we do about that? Like, how do we think beyond the time that we're in the office, or we have to do stuff to get all the caseloads and yada yada. Like, we understand that, but these young people, we still have a life, and we're still hurting, we're still healing, we're still growing and learning. So how can we go beyond just, we've done that, take that, and to help build the next generation?
Brilliant. So we're going to take some questions for the floor for the next 10 minutes. So if you've got any questions for our lovely panel. Denise, and I like your hair. Denise.
Hi everyone, I really appreciate you being on the panel, and I feel really privileged as well. The sister in the beautiful Kenro, just wanted to really ask you about, when you talked about being an African child in a Caribbean home, do you think it's important that Caribbean families are also curious, because they need to be curious about your very rich culture? You said you're Congolese, the food, the culture, the language, all of that. I want to know about it. You know, so curiosity is really, really important.
Do you know what? Good question, because I think at the time, because, oh gosh, when was I? I left my foster placement back in 2009. So I feel like at that time back then, a lot of African culture was almost looked down upon at that time. And what I have found is over time, because when I was there, it was like, she'll teach me bits of like the African culture, but because she didn't understand it fully herself, and also her family didn't really understand it, they weren't really into the African culture at that time as well, which would also impact that, because your family are your support network as a foster carer. So that would also impact on the care that you provide. But I feel like over time, with training, learning, that she's become more versed in that. And then now with African culture all of a sudden becoming more mainstream because of social media and stuff like that, I feel like now we have more opportunities to be more curious and be like, okay, there are resources for us to actually go out. For example, how many foster carers are using YouTube to look up recipes for their young children in their placement? Or how many social workers are sending links forward to their foster carers to say, hey, here's this recipe that they used to eat when they were at home. You can try and make it. So I think like even little things like that are really important for us to do it. And even the handbook that Daryl was talking about earlier, and me and Rebecca were saying, oh my gosh, we've been talking about this for so long. Why has there not been a handbook for so long? So like even little things like that is so important. But I think making sure that when we are doing those handbooks for each authority, get your young people involved in those handbooks. Ask them, what do you want to see in that handbook? What is missing in that? And get them to contribute, because overall, that is what's going to help make that change.
We've got another question. Kadia, if you go to that lady just here. No, this lady here, she was next. And then next.
Hi, my name's Leanne. I'm an Ofsted inspector. Thank you for sharing your experiences. It's really, I've learned a lot, and I've written quite a lot of notes down about things to take forward when I go out to inspect. So I inspect children's homes mainly, in residential schools. What would you suggest that inspectors need to ask black children in children's homes to really get their view, voice and experience of what's happening for them in the homes? And another add-on question would be, what do we ask the staff as well to make sure they've got a proper understanding of how to care for children, black children in their care?
Can I answer that question? Yeah, being care experienced. Hey, let me take that question. I think the training that social workers have and foster carers have and everybody else in children's social care have, I think residential staff need to have exactly the same training. There is no difference. Just because you have a house with lots of children in is no different to a foster carer who has one child. You are having these children in your home. You've got to make sure that you're passionate and curious about knowing how to raise them as well. So I think it should be that the training, the cultural competency training that we talked about at the very beginning needs to be across the board. And so I remember mentoring a young person who was placed in a residential, and we talked about food. But my company, we had to start sending care packages. She called me, can you send me stuff for my hair? Can you send me stuff for, and then we'd ask the staff. The staff would literally say, the money's not here to buy you food and hair stuff. And then when she would cook her food, they'd be like, your food stinks in this house, you can't really. So we had to get her back down to the borough, but she should have not been moved in the first place. Anyway, that's another story. So I do think, to answer that question, the questions that have to be asked are the same questions that are asked when a child is placed in foster care. We have to do the same thing across the board and level it up, because there's too much, well, we do this here and we do that there, but we have to level up so we're all singing on the same cultural competency sheet, and it goes to residential, foster care, kinship care, whichever area it goes, adoption, it goes there. We spoke about adoption before with Dee, and my thoughts on that is, if the child comes through the door of the corporate parenting door, that assessment has got to be right. Learn everything about the child, not just the trauma that they've experienced, but their cultural identity. And if that child then goes on to adoption, that assessment that's been taken place, that document, get handed to the adopter. There's no, let's start all over again, because we're wasting time. So it has to be handed from coming through the corporate parenting front door, and if they're going to adoption, that document gets handed to the adopter, and it's a flow. So there's no sort of break in the chain. Is that okay?
I was just going to say as well, in my children's homes, we had, even though they were in Essex, we had such a mix of kids in the children's home. One of the things I would be saying nowadays is that you should have a cultural night for all of the different children that are represented in that home. We've got lots of kids of Eastern European extraction now who are coming into the care system. Again, you know, we should be making sure that we understand their culture as well. And I just think that's one fun way in which you could do it, is just by preparing a different meal every week that represents the children that are in your home. And it shouldn't just be about doing it for them, it should be about teaching them to do it as well.
Important. Yeah. Next question.
Oh, Judith.
Does that answer the question?
Yeah. I just wanted to make a point on what you asked about the residential homes as well, because I think something that's really important to also make sure of is that your staff don't bring in their own prejudice into the role, because that can really also impact on how they work with the young people. So checking that and making sure that you have interview questions around that can kind of tease that out if there is any sort of like prejudice and stuff, because sometimes what you can find is some people will view the children in the children's home and say, oh, they should know how to behave, they're old enough to know better, or if they come from an African or Caribbean household, their parents would have taught them better, why are they behaving like that? So kind of also having that understanding of like, no, it's not going to be like that, and to realise that they may not be like my own children at home.
And also to add to that, we're talking about this is great. Some people in children's social care are scared of black kids. I had that conversation this week with a social worker, and she said her colleague was scared of a 14-year-old black child. And we're like, well, why? Does it make any sense? She's not aggressive, like that aggressive. She's just saying her views. So you're right. They've got to make sure that I don't like saying this word, this unconscious bias doesn't sort of pop up and then it gets labelled as unconscious bias, but it's not really. It's just... Anyway, moving on to the next question.
Hi, I just wanted to say that in terms of life story work, I wondered what that has played in your history, because hearing, you know, yourself, Matthew, saying that you didn't know the ethnicity of the black side of you, that could still happen today, because many children are being adopted or they're in foster care, and social workers are saying, oh, I think Dad was from... That shouldn't be happening now. And I just wondered, were you ever given anything about your past? Was there chronology? Was there life story? Because probably getting a lot of social workers' nerves. I know how busy everybody is, but actually as an IRO, I want to know that my child knows why they came into care, what was their journey, because I have children saying, oh, it was because I fell off the bed when I was 4, and then my brother burnt his hand, and then the police came. Actually, it was nothing to do with what you did, why you came into care. So that's my question as to children's understanding of why they came into care, what their journey was, and who their parents are or weren't. Sorry, and the lady next to me has a question as well.
Oh, yeah, I'll just answer your question. Life story books are just incredible, aren't they, if you're opportunity to have one, because they do tell your story. I was fortunate enough to actually remember, which is bizarre, because when I share my story, people are like, how do you remember before you're 5 years old? And I'm like, I swear I remember. And there's something to that. There have been studies around that where there is a possibility, especially maybe if it was tied to a bit of trauma. So I remember as early as like 3 years old. So I remember going into care. I remember what happened at home with my parents, and led up to me going into care. I remember when my sister was born. I just remember everything. However, sort of the transition from foster care, having been placed there for 3 years, so that was a long time technically with my care, where you built that bond, and then all of a sudden you're being adopted, and it's like, for my case, I know this doesn't happen often, so mine might be a little bit unique, or there might be people that resonate with this, but my adoption process happened really fast. I didn't get the opportunity to have a bond with my new adoptive mum, or what we refer to as our forever mummy. And you know, she was from Nigeria, we're from Zimbabwe. We lived with this white British woman for 3 years, so it's just like, yo, who am I? And I don't think there was the sort of, we got a life book, but I don't believe that that conversation was had in depth with our new parent. To just kind of remember, like, these kids actually come from somewhere, and so it's so important in that process, in that adoptive process especially, to just recognise the story, share that story, ensure that that parent has just understands. Like, it's one thing to have a couple of dates with your new mom or go on a walk, and like, we did all that, and it's like you don't really get to know someone in that period of time, and then now you're supposed to spend forever with them. And so having to grow up in this household where you're learning things from scratch, would have been easier for my younger sister because she was a baby, but for me, I'm like, yo, I'm supposed to speak your language? I barely know my own. But it's so important that, yeah, you are telling that story in the life story, and if that isn't happening, then it needs to happen.
Can I also add something as well?
You can clap. You can clap.
Yeah, just on the topic of life story work, I was unfortunate that I never got anything in relation to life story. Even accessing my care records have been such a challenge. And I can see people nodding in the audience, so I know it's not just me. But actually realising, I think just even in social work and, you know, other, across the board, even in schools, knowing why it's so important to have that, to have some sort of your history, to have it there, so it's not just like, okay, actually it didn't happen, it did happen. You need to talk about it, you need to be supported to talk about it and actually ask questions about it. So children are given that ability to ask questions about their own experiences, but if they don't have anything, then it's so difficult to do that. And I think that's something that really needs to be carried throughout all systems, to be honest, where even if you're meeting health professionals, if you're meeting, you know, just something there so that people know there's a reference to go to. Because when it doesn't happen, it's so difficult. And unfortunate, like Queenie, to just remember a lot of my history because of everything, lots of different things that happened. But not everyone can do that. And everyone needs that because things did happen to you. I mean, I'm lucky enough to have some like pictures of when I was little, but not everyone will have that as well. So it's so important to make sure that the child is, you know, involved in that work as well, and make sure that they actually feel seen and heard and their history is acknowledged.
Can I just add something to that as well? I think the importance of making sure that life work is accurate as well, because in my experience I was told one thing when it was another. So every time I went to that book as a child growing up into a teenager, every time I referenced that big red book and looked in my past, it wasn't, half of it wasn't true. So
I was going to say that you're assuming that social workers don't lie on the files and always know what's going on.
Yeah.
They don't.
Yeah,
and,
of course.
And actually, I had a really good relationship with my social worker well into my 50s until I read my file a few months ago and read the way she described my father, which was racist and really awful. Yeah. So you can't always trust them to get it right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say, in terms of, I felt like for my life story work, I didn't do any life story work really. And in terms of like my reports, I felt like they weren't a true depiction. They won't be, because I haven't even bothered to go look at them. They won't be a true depiction of my life, because when I think about it, from the fact that I wasn't even believed in regards to who my mother actually was, if I was to go and read that life story work, it would still say, oh, your auntie is your mum, your uncle-in-law is your dad, which for me, that would be triggering because of the experience that I had with him. So I think even taking things like that into consideration is really, really important.
Next question.
Hello. Hi, so I'm Kelechi and I'm an independent safeguarding consultant, and I work for Listen Up Research doing adultification training nationally. So I want to say I'm having an amazing time today. I'm health by background, so I wanted to do a bit of a spin on it from a trauma-informed perspective. So my question's directed to Queenie and Rebecca. So we know about disorganised attachment. We know about emotional unavailability in mothers. There's the black trauma and the racial trauma, right? So I wanted to come from the perspective, I know Rebecca, you mentioned going back to your, I'm Igbo, going back to your mum around 10. And with experience, I've worked in CAMS as a child protection lead, and I've worked with a lot of care experienced children who, I would say the traumatic impact, you can have sexual abuse, physical abuse, but emotional harm, neglect, the outcomes in life is the most traumatic and evidenced. When you've gone back to your mum at 10 and Queenie, I wanted to know a bit more about the attachment, Nigerian parents' availability, and how that impacted you. So you can be in the home with your parent, you've gone back to your parent, but I'm wondering around professionals' insight into how harmful it is when there is neglect and still emotional detachment happening. What did that look like for both you, Queenie, and Rebecca? Thank you.
Thank you so much for your question. It definitely is impactful because for myself and my younger sister, emotional abuse was up there. There was the physical abuse, but emotional abuse I say because we had transitioned from a foster home that was loving, you got lots of attention, you had people all around you that kind of showered you with love, even though they didn't match the colour of your skin, but you just felt warm, like that was home, that's your mum, that's your brother, your sister, your cousins, to then transition into a new home where, and I'm not saying this is all Nigerians, but my mum, she really struggled with connecting with us emotionally, and we lived with her for 10 years. But in the first year that we lived with her leaving care, it was almost like you're getting used to it, and you're sort of learning about this person, she's learning about you, she's now introducing a little bit of her techniques to parenting.
Sorry. You know, go kneel down, face the wall, that's your punishment. You're thinking, okay. And then you're sort of left there for a bit. And I know that sounds a bit mad, and I do apologise. I was saying this to my lovely panel here a couple of days ago, is that I tend to kind of like laugh at situations that have happened in my past because that's how I sort of go through it and like cope with it. Okay, thank you. Yeah, like my sister and I really struggled to connect with our mum, you know, because all we ever looked for was a mum. And then it's one thing because after some time, like she took us out of the country to go and live in Nigeria, where we then were put into boarding school, and it's kind of like, how do we build a bond with you if you're sort of shipping us away? And so my sort of question or my conversation with my social workers at the time would be, did you like think about this like in that process? Don't think like, oh, we just have a lot of kids and we just have to send them off and adopt all of them and put them elsewhere. Like, my parents were still very much alive. Like, did you not think to like build some kind of bridges? Whilst also that's not always the solution, by the way. It's you need to take into consideration the emotion of that young person, like what they're going to have to deal with, and the future that they're going to have to build for themselves, and also the emotional maturity or stability or independence of the actual parent or carer in question, and that's definitely something that we had to deal with and to navigate through, and learn from that, and hope to God that if we have our own family in the future, that we don't pass that on, kind of thing. So I don't know if this is, I'm sure it is like part of the package of learning for social workers and the social care team, but it's just something to definitely strongly think about, because so many children and young people in care and that have left care struggle with this. So yeah, I hope I answered your question.
Yes, thank you so much for asking that question. Yeah, I think my my parents are were Nigerian, I should say. I think it was really, really difficult for her. I have to acknowledge that because I don't think it would be fair. I was the last of 4 children. Actually, we would have been 6 in total, but 2 of them passed away when they were quite little. And I think I was the one that my mum didn't plan for. And it was difficult. She was in a new country. Her husband had just gone off and left her. And she had to deal with all these children on her own. Adding to that, one of my older brothers has sickle cell. So she was in and out of hospital with him, lots of different things. So I now believe that my mum didn't have the capacity to parent, and that's a really difficult thing to say, but I feel like it needs to be acknowledged. And it's an easier way of me dealing with it, because I can say, yes, I did feel emotionally neglected. I felt that I wasn't seen and heard. I had come back from being with a mother who loved me unconditionally to going back into, and the way I left was quite traumatic in itself, but then going back into a culture which was Nigerian. It was quite a strict culture as well, because I had to go to church every Sunday. No one explained to me why I needed to do this, and I was expected to just fit in without any questions asked. And even like my social workers were involved, no one said, what is happening with this girl? You know, what can we do to support her, and not just her mum and the rest of her family? And even just having a relationship, like how to build relationships with families. You know, when you don't know your family and your family's a stranger to you, it can be so hard. Like I think people don't realise, you know, that you can grow up with siblings and feel like a stranger to them, and they feel like a stranger to you because they're siblings in name, but there's no connection there. And all my siblings are much older than me. My sister, who's here today, she's 7 years older than me. My other brother is 12 years older than me, and my eldest brother is like nearly 20 years older than me. So the massive age difference, and no one thought, what can we do to support this? And not just support the children, support the mum as well, because my mum did struggle. And, you know, when I came not long after I came back to London, she was ill. She was ill throughout my whole of my teenage years, and there were times when I had to look after her. And it was just put upon me. I didn't have any, say in it. I just had to do it. And I couldn't understand why no one was helping. And just having to carry that responsibility myself and just trying in the best way possible. That's something I don't want any other child to go through. You know, particularly a black child who you think, well, they're with their culture now, they're in their home, you know, everything must be fine. It's not always fine. You know, getting to the root cause of what's going on and looking at ways to actively support and change the system is so important, because no child should ever feel forgotten.
Yeah.
So if you remember what groups you're in, the question we're going to ask you guys is, what do you think is important in knowing how to raise a black child in the care system? If you go into your teams with this question, what do you think is important to know when raising a black child in the care system? All right? Yeah, a round of applause. Brilliant. One thing I really want to say, and want to acknowledge, is that we knew today was going to be a roller coaster of emotions. And we knew today that we, as a collective of care experienced young people, we would be triggered. We knew. We did this last year and the same thing happened, but we had our therapists on hand to hold our care experienced young people in place to guide them and signpost them forward. And the thing is, we knew this was going to happen because what happened with George Floyd got everybody talking about race, culture, and identity. But children's social care sector was not saying a thing. Not a thing at all. So, if you can imagine, for all those years that a young black person has been in the care system, they've been silenced, not able to talk about their black care experience journey. And now talking about it and hearing us talk about it is going to erupt because they've been silenced for such a very, very, very long time. And we have to really hold children's social care accountable for this. Because if you can think about it, a lot of our black kids are in prison, they're in a mental institution, because their voices have been suppressed. And we all know what happens when our voices are suppressed. It comes out of us in different ways, whether we like to acknowledge that or not. So please, from today forward, children's social care sector, and I'm talking about the voluntary sector and the children's social care departments themselves, allow the black kids to have a voice and really be curious about what's going on and listen from today and take that forward, because we can't keep going around the same mountain for another 40 years. All right? So, that said, let's do that round robin of what do you think is important to know. I don't know what the question was now. What do you think you need to know when raising a black child in the care system? And I'm going to go to, let's do it this way, because I don't want this. Let's give it up to our runners. So, we're going to do it in order this time, so you're not running around. So group 7, pick up yourselves. All right, and one thing that you think is important to know when raising a black child in the care system. Let's go.
Hello, okay. So we had about
Just one thing.
16.
Just one thing.
One thing.
And they'll put it up, yeah.
Yes, so our one thing that we think is super important is that the children or young people see you loving people who look like them.
Brilliant, perfect. Thank you. We need that representation. Yep. Round of applause for yourselves, pick up yourselves. Come on, this group here. Come on. That one thing.
Okay.
And then could you put the flip chart to here? Thanks. Thank you.
We had so many, so just trying to work out which one we're going to say.
Wow.
I think there was quite a lot of conversation about your need to make sure you are checking your own prejudice and privilege in order to make sure there is a range of people from that child's connections, whether that's safe or unsafe, to work out the best way to get them connected either with a birth family member or extended family member or local community members or even remotely. Do you know what I mean? In the era of Zoom, like, get it going. So some kind of community connection that would be enriching and safe for them. That's one of them.
Thank you, thank you. For me, I think your key word is safe connections. Because we heard about the connections back with our family that wasn't safe. So the key word there is making sure there are safe connections. Yep. Next group, round of applause for yourselves. Yes?
Oh, is it us?
Yeah, just your one thing.
Okay, the one thing was really about finding a way to check the happiness of the siblings of that foster family or parent. Can I just make a reason? And I'll say that because in my experience, it was the emotional trauma from the siblings, the power over me, that if you tell on this, you'll be the one to go. Yeah.
Yeah, wow, that's powerful. That is powerful to unpack. Thank you so much for that one. Yeah, thank you. So much to digest.
So in our group we spoke about, it sounds basic, but
racism and accepting that racism exists and not expecting or relying on black children are so resilient. You know, children can be so resilient. So actually saying that actually as 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds can have a way of understanding that actually they are othered in the interactions that they have, and so the way that they're silenced if they're carers, grandparents, people that foster carers don't allow them or don't want to have the understanding that actually racism is in fact.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay. Yeah. Hold on. Yes.
So we had supporting a child or young person to navigate their black racial identity and racial trauma in a system that's not perfect, and to fill the gaps as part of creative practice.
Could you say that again?
Okay. So it's long. Okay, so supporting a black child or young person to navigate their black racial identity and racial trauma through a care system that's not perfect, and the need to fill the gaps as part of creative practice.
Yes, perfect. The navigation is crucial. Absolutely. And then that feeds into the cultural competency side. You've got to be culturally competent enough to do that. Okay, that's great. Oh, young man, round of applause. Yeah, now one thing that's important.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Go for it.
So what's important? So one of the points that we raised was the individual. I feel like it's very important that we take the time to understand the individual, understand that no two people's needs are the same, no two people share the same feeling, and no two people, that's my train of thought, but
no, that's fine. Spot on. Well done. Confidence building. Thank you. The group at the back, your one thing.
Hi. Our one thing is the child's records, and how important it is for professionals to record accordingly, because as we know, children, adults will come back to look at their records, and to be meaningful recording, to be culture aware and informed child's profile. So the child's profile is very important. We write it, it's something they can look at 10, 15 years later, and it needs to be meaningful.
And I think as well, to add to that, I think to get it checked, because if you're a social worker that's not black, get it checked by somebody who is. I would get that fact checked and get it proofed. So that, because when we come back to read it, the way how we're described, it's like, well, do you even know me? Do you get my culture? But to have it fact checked as well is an important thing, but so I agree with that one.
And it includes the journey of the child as well, which is very important.
Yes, exactly. Thank you so much for that. Well done. And then...
So we talked about the need
why are
to...
you sitting down?
Sorry, let me stand.
Don't worry.
So we talked about the need to be vulnerable. It's really, really important to be vulnerable to show that you're human. You know, you need to show your human side. You need to show that you're passionate about why you chose to make a decision to care for this child. And at the end of the day, you need to show love. Like, we need to be okay to say that word and show that vulnerability.
Brilliant. Because when you show it, we see it, and we relate to you. Yeah, so brilliant. Okay, how are we feeling about all of that? Is everyone feeling okay? Right, so I want you to stand up, stretch your legs a little bit, just shake in the spot that you are in at the moment. Is Steve about? Steve, are you up there? Brilliant, okay, brilliant. And then you just shake your legs, move your arms, move your arms. That's it, and then you can sit back down when you feel like you've stretched and done some yoga. That's perfect. Oh, fantastic.
Give me a shimmy.
Now, brilliant. So what we're going to do now, you can turn your chairs back around facing this way as well if you're sitting with your backs to us. You can do that. Just sit sit as comfortable as you are. And then we're going to go into celebrating our care experienced young people. And to do that, I'm going to welcome one of my good friends, a brother from another mother, Rick Flo!
How you doing, guys? Nah, that's not the vibe. How you doing, guys? Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. I can't lie, look, I've been here for only, a couple hours and it's been emotional. It's been emotional. Seeing what I saw on the panel, it just obviously emotions in me and how I look at my relationship with my biological mom and my sisters, and it's been real powerful. That's what I want to say about today. It's super important that this carries on, like onwards and upwards. I go by the name of Rick Flo. I'm a rapper and the founder of Mantra Music. Mantra Music is the world's first record label that exclusively supports care experienced young artists. We piloted it last year and it was a lot, but it was like, we've got a documentary on YouTube. It shows you how impactful it is to the 5 young artists that we supported. And today, we've got one of the artists, he goes by the name of Soul. And he'll be blessing your ears very, very shortly. So Soul, can I just welcome you to the stage? A round of applause for Soul. And also, I was on the panel last year, and we had Keely on the panel as well. Now Keely just oozes like poetry with her articulation. Like honestly, she just oozes it. So right after Soul, she's gonna be blessing, elevating the vibes as well. So so give a warm welcome to Soul. And enjoy it, take it.
Right, so as Rick over said, I go by the name Soul. I'm a singer-songwriter and I'm an actor. I'm ready to establish myself in the music industry. I grew up in foster care as well, and my passion has kind of evolved throughout my time in care, and I want to use my experience to just portray the message of healing. So I've got a song here, and I've written it, I think I was about 17 years old. The first thing I ever recorded in the studio. It's called Surrender. I hope you like it.
Never mind, it's so bad, man, more time. Forever on my mind, who am I, how did I? When will I fly? What did I do? I recognize the voices inside. All these mirrors, and they all look at me like I'm the enemy. And I figure I should hold on to what's left of me. So long, I don't see you around no more. Slow songs tearing me apart to the core. I surrender. what's the difference? Don't be a fool, no, 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 it's not you, no. Can't handle the truth, no. Still learning to be still. Learning about love, still talking to the sky. Still no reply. And if you hold me, you'll hear my soul scream. Oh, I've been so unstable, I've been so ungrateful. I surrender. I don't wanna fight you no more. I surrender. With my head on the floor, I surrender. I surrender, I surrender, no, I surrender. Thank you, guys. Thanks a lot, guys.
Hey, that's the vibrations, man. But we're gonna keep it going. The marathon continues. Hey, let's welcome Keely to the stage.
Wow, wow, wow. Hello, guys. I think everything about today has just been very emotional, but very powerful. And I just want us to just give a big hand clap to Judith. Absolutely amazing. Judith, you are a boss lady, and yeah, we just salute you today and always. But yeah, this poem that I'm about to recite today is called No Longer Hidden. I hope you enjoy it. Being talked about in pathway plans, where our words were not heard. Professionals making promises, but not sticking to their word. Going months without visits, because you were at your peak, right? Children attending meetings, but feeling voiceless when they speak. Caseloads in double figures, inevitably getting bigger. Deeming a child as challenging when the entire care system is the trigger. Failing to properly deliver and meet our needs. I mean, how do you expect us to thrive and succeed? Every child matters, right? 2003. No wonder it was scrapped. How could it have been believed this? Not just me. There's a whole army saying this. So where's the change and the action? There can't be a delay in this. It's about time that we're held to account because we've all been affected. What a reckless amount. But we're stronger now because we found our voice. We've risen against the odds because we've made our choice. These notions and beliefs are not just ideas. You see, these have been birthed through blood, sweat and tears. This light was once dark, but it's no longer hidden. We've experienced hell, but we've broke out of this prison, and for that I am proud. And you should be too. Hats off and gold medals for all we've been through. We're no longer hidden. Take back that permission. Speak up so that they listen, because we're no longer hidden. No longer hidden. No longer hidden. Wow. We have some talented people in the care, in the care system. Very, very talented. So we're gonna keep celebrating our young people, and we're gonna do a raffle, and I want you to give a round of applause. A lot of people you don't know, but my brother's here.
Nicholas, could you come to the stage, please? Give a round of applause. Fantastic. Fantastic. So we were in the care system together. Well, we were in the care system, but we weren't in the care system together. He went through 4 placements, I went through 1. But we had a fantastic social worker who made sure we saw each other on a regular basis. So I guess you can say that we're not going anywhere, right? And I would say that we've been through a lot, but we try to keep going and keep encouraging each other as best we can. You won't get him speaking about his care experience journey. He's just not like that. I'm the business head and he's the creative head. So he will help me in spaces that I need help with. So I introduce you to my big brother. Right. So we have a raffle to do. I will tell you the prizes. And the raffle is for our care experience care leavers who made it out today. So I'm going to ask my brother to pull out one and say the number. So if you're a care experience person and you've got a raffle ticket in your hand, can you, right, the number?
68.
What's your name?
Voluntary Sector.
Pleased to meet you, Devonte. You are the proud winner of Dinner for Two at Luciano's by Gino De Campo's restaurant. Well done! Enjoy! You can take another person. There's a limit on them. He's like, I'm not taking on Dinner for Two, them meals are for me. Okay, we have another prize to give away. Go on, bro.
62.
Woo! Number 62? No, number 62, you're not in the house? Okay, go to the next one, they're not here. Next one.
Oh, 66.
Number 66. And what's your name? Jordan. Pleased to meet you, Jordan. So you have won breakfast for 2 at the Ivy. There you go. Well done. Congratulations. Congratulations. Give a round of applause. Wow. It's creating good memories for our care experience, young. Bye. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you to my brother. Thank you. It's about allowing our care experience young people to have those good experiences that don't come when they're in the sector, because it's all about budget, right? So we like to try and do what the care system can't quite do just yet, because they will do it, hopefully. Okay, so where's Denise? Denise, could you come to the stage, please? Yes. Give a hand for Denise. Yeah. So Denise, in her beautiful, she got the memo. She got the green memo. Yeah, she got the memo. We didn't plan this. So Denise, can you tell us a bit about the book that you've written?
Yes, so first I have to say, what a fantastic event. The energy, the power. The energy, the power. So I'm one of the authors of this book. I wrote it because I saw that many black children were placed with white foster carers, and the foster carers would come to me and say, Denise, I've got a black child in placement. What is sickle cell? What is rice and peas? How do I do her hair? There were so many questions. So I decided to write a book. It's a really empowering resource. It's a learning and development. We've got lots of different things in there about recipes, identity. There's so much things about healthcare, skincare, culture, and it's a great resource for not just foster carers, for social workers. We have social workers that haven't got all the answers. We've got foster carers that haven't got the answers either. So please go out there, spread the word about it. It's great for residential care, it's great for schools, it's great for foster carers and doctors. It's great for everyone.
What's it called?
It's called Black Children in Care, looking at their health, hair and skin. You can email me at deniseLewisConsultancy@gmail.com, and also you can get it on Amazon, good on Amazon. Please support, we need your support.
Thank you, thank you. But one thing to say, in your goodie bags, you have got like a flyer about the book. You probably haven't looked in yet. Brilliant. And also, Steve, I've got some feedback. Okay, brilliant, you've done it. So, and Steve's standing right there, I'll look it up. Okay, you're there. All right. So, yeah, in your goodie bag, you have got a flyer that tells you about that, and I think that carries on to the question, that the things that you need to know when raising a black child in the care system, that will help you. And also, in your bag, you have Coco magazines. Could you take them out and wave them, please? And could you take a shot of that for me, Jodie? Your Coco magazines, could you take them out and wave them? Just wave them, wave them, wave them. Yeah, keep waving until Jodie takes that shot, and I'm going to tell you about why we have those in your bags. Jodie, we're waiting. We've not been to the gym today. Our arms are aching. Okay, yeah, take a picture of the magazines being waved at the conference. Perfect. Brilliant. So the reason why we have put Coco magazines into your goodie bags is for you to take these magazines and give them to the black children in your care. So whether they're in your borough, or whether they're in your home, in foster care, or whatever. And I would really strongly recommend that you keep update. You subscribe to the magazine as well. My organisation, the Transform You, we subscribe and we give all of our black kids this resource. And when they see it, some of the kids, when I rock up to school, they say to me, well, where's my magazine this month? They know when it's coming out. And also, I also say to them, so have you thrown the last one away? They say, no, I've kept a stack under my bed. I'm keeping them because they're really, really good. So we want you to subscribe to the magazine so that is something that can be handed to the black child that's in your care. And that also follows on to what you need to know in raising, can I have the podium please? What you need to know in raising that child that you have who's black in your care. Is that okay? Okay, brilliant. So now we're going to move on to one final thing that we're launching today. So everybody who's left now, they're going to miss what we're launching at the Black Care Experience. Omar, could you come up with me, please? Give a hand to Omar, who's going to help me. So, today we are going to be launching the Black Care Experience Charter. Because to carry on this good work, we can't just leave here today and say, well, we're finished now, we've had a good time, we're going to go back and we're just going to get on with it. The realities of that is caseloads, work, everything, emails, court visits, emergencies, it happens. So we want to build a system that will help you in your practice and in your systems. And this goes to not just children's social care itself, for those who work as social workers, foster carers, and those roles, but this also goes to the voluntary sector. And not everything in the Charter is going to be relevant to your team, your role, your department, your organisation, but whatever is relevant to you, we're asking you to commit to following through on the Charter that we have. Can you see that? Because I see we're standing in the way. You guys okay? Can you guys see or no? Okay, someone said no. Steve, could you flip it? Can we put it up top? Where's Steve? I can't see Steve anywhere. Did you just say he's here? Oh, he's up top. Can we flip it to the top one, Steve? All right, 2 minutes. So, the charter that we've created is a set of commitments for all the workforces to do their best to improve the care outcomes and life chances of the black child or young person, and keep them connected to their culture, identity and heritage as they journey through the system. And for context, we're calling the workforces all who work within children's social care services and all who work in the voluntary sector within children's social care. We believe that implementing this charter will bring to life the legal duty stated in the Children's Act 1989. We also believe that this charter will bring to life the duty that's outlined in the guidance that they've got of the 1989 Act. And we also believe that implementing this charter in your service will help to see black children and young people have a better care experience. So, what's in the charter? Can I click forward and then you flip it up? Huh? Oh, fantastic. Woo! Give a hand to Steve! Brilliant. It's good when you have the right people on your team, right? Makes a difference. So, what's in the charter? Oh, okay, that's the first page. Oh, right, he's doubled it. Right, okay. So can you see the top? Can you all see the top now? Yeah? A little bit. It might be where you're sitting. Come to the end a little bit. It might be better. Yes. Oh, you need glasses. Okay. Should have gone to Specsavers. Okay. So that tells us about what the charter is. And we launched the charter this morning on our website. I did that first thing before I left the house, so it's brand spanking new, published. And we've also got a document that we're going to give you before you leave, so you get to physically see what the charter is as well. So the first point, or the first commitment within the charter that we're asking you to do is for the workforces to actively address the systemic racial inequalities and discrimination on every level across the departments and the services. And we said why we want you to commit to doing this is because left unaddressed, this has the potential of continuing to be a hindrance and blocker to anyone seeking to be culturally competent. And left unaddressed, this has the potential of having a detrimental impact on the care received by the black child and young person in the care system. So that's the first commitment within the charter. Number 2.
Should I introduce myself quickly?
Yes, sorry.
Yeah. So I'm just going to introduce myself quickly for those that don't know me. So my name is Omar Mohammed. I am a person with lived experience of social work services, also a social worker now, lecturer, researcher, the whole host of lots of different things. One of our most important identities is I'm also a kinship carer, kinship sibling carer for my little sister over there. Shout out. And yeah, I'm really, really privileged to be on the steering team for the Black Care Experience Network. With Judith and all of her amazing leadership, this is what we've got today, this amazing charter. So I think, on behalf of the whole steering team, we're really proud to share this with you. And just before I get to point 2, I just want to really, really state that, you all kind of wrote this charter today as well. You
did.
I feel like if I look at everyone's notebooks, it's going to be this charter. Do you know what I mean? This is hopefully the embodiment of the reflection of this conference today. So let's hope that we represent it.
And not only that, when we were hearing the feedback, I turned around to Omar and said, "It's the charter, it's the charter."
Yeah, you guys are writing it.
You wrote that charter today and confirmed the road that we're taking.
Exactly that. So in saying that, cultural competence, we've talked a lot about cultural competence today, and that is something that we're putting really high on our charter. We need every single social worker, foster carer, anyone involved, working with black children and young people to understand what it means to be black, and also to understand that racial identity, but also the wide kind of intersectional diversity in terms of the different ethnicities within the black community, thinking about multi-ethnic young people as well. We need to be able to be confident, ask those questions. And it's not a, kind of one size fits all approach. We need to be looking at the good practice that cultural competence allows us to have when we're working with children and young people. And so that's going to be something really, really high on our kind of agenda, for this charter. We've got to put cultural needs first and really unpick and understand identity.
Brilliant. And then number 3, which underpins number 2, is that for both workforces to work alongside services that are culturally specific and competent to work with the black community. Because we feel like if you're going to build and get to know about your black young people, bring in the representation that they can work with, because representation does really matter. Yep.
Yeah.
Number 4.
So point number 4 on the charter is all about the need for workforces to proactively seek to know and document the ethnicity. Something that we talked about a lot within the kind of the workshops and the groups today is, what does it mean to mark down an ethnicity, and why are we doing that? Let's think about that for a moment. What is the meaning behind that? When we think about the ethnicity of black children and young people, we need to make sure that we are proactively engaging and understanding in those cultural identities, how that's different, how that's specific to those individual children and young people that we're working with. And let's promote that so that they feel seen, they feel heard, they feel represented within the care and the love that they should be receiving.
Brilliant. And then
it's down there.
Number 5 is at the top. Yeah. And then something that I feel is really important within the Charter is to commit to creating a safe, relatable space for the true voice of the black child or the young person to be heard about how they are experiencing the system. And we say true voice because sometimes you hear people say we want to amplify their voices, but when I say true voice, it's our truth. It's about what's happening to us. Because sometimes we sit around the table and nobody really wants to hear, they just want to hear what's happening in the care system, how's your care journey, how you getting on in school, but they don't want to hear how we're really feeling and the things that we're going through. So to create those spaces where we can be able to have our true voice being heard, and we know sometimes this happens on children's care councils, I believe, but yeah, that's another thing anyway, we won't go into detail about that. But they're going to be on advisory boards as well, make sure that their voice is being heard. I think we heard somebody today talk about the subgroups for black children in the care system to sit on a children in care council and have their voice heard, but we really want you to create that safe space. It's got to be a safe space, and when they start opening up, something like today, have that therapeutic practice that they can relate to there with them whilst they're telling or giving their views or giving the local authorities or any advisory groups the guidance on how to move things forward as well. And then with creating the safe space, buddy them up with a mentor that looks like them. I think that's really, really important. You have to do that because then they're able to speak freely about how they're experiencing the care system. And then when they talk about how they're experiencing life in the system, take action straight away. Because young kids always say to me, everything takes too long. I might as well do it myself. I get that all the time. And I have to sort of say to them, let's pace ourselves because care system, your social worker, it's not my problem. I need to know now. It needs to get sorted now. And then sometimes also when they do share what's going on with them in the care system, they sometimes don't want me to say anything because they're scared if it gets back to their foster carer or their social worker, who's come at them in a racialized way, they're like, well, if you say and I go back to the house, or if my social comes to see me, then it's curtains for me, Judith. So it's got to be done in a safe, really safe environment, and that's a commitment of the Charter.
Yeah, definitely. Let's think about how we can create safe spaces for black children and young people within the workforces that we work in. So we've got to really, really understand the fact that if we are going to be consulting black children and young people, they are holders of knowledge, of skills, of experiences that are going to greatly improve their lives, but also the needs of the organization, the reputation of the organization, etc. And if that's something you're doing, think about how you would consult any other consultant in any other area. You'd be paying them, right? So let's think about point number 6 around paying black children, young people for their consultation. If you're going to be doing advisory groups, think about how you're going to effectively co-produce and work with and alongside black children and young people from their care experience perspective. When we're thinking about paid opportunities, we're thinking about, the same that you would pay a, professor, coming into your organization. The knowledge that care experience people hold is of, arguably more value actually, than what a professor would be telling us. So we need to be paying in line with what's needed and the value that we put to that. We need to be providing support to help Black care experience care leavers heal from the triggers that will surface and the wounds that will reopen in their quest to help bring about change. We need to be trauma-informed in our approach, and not just saying that in terms of a buzzword. We really need to take into account just how those wounds can open up and how we need to work towards healing. And Judith is an amazing example of how this conference is run. We need to be seeing that kind of echoed throughout services.
And yes. And then number 7 is the workforce is to collate real-time data on both the care journey and the outcomes of the Black child and young person. I sat on the board for England's Independent Care Review, and they kept saying, there's no data, there's no data, there's no data. Right, okay, there's no data, we'll give you data. So we're gonna ask you as a commitment to really, really document everything about the Black child that's in your local authority, that comes to your voluntary organisation, every single detail in terms of drill down into the ethnicity, Black, Caribbean, okay, Jamaican or St. Lucian, Nigerian or Congolese, drill down into who they really are. Please don't merge us into one, we're not one. We might look the same, but not. But we need the specifics drilled down. And then, in that as well, I'm just giving you an example. Tell us who they're placed with, and tell us what support they're getting, and how they're getting on at school, and then what are their outcomes, because then that gives the local authority or whoever is gonna have that information in real time, will be able to put their interventions in place straight away. So we're not going to wait until a year's time to put the intervention in place when that young person's out of the system. That information will be there straight away, so we know where this young person is placed, we know what ethnicity they are, we know how to match them up so that they can do well when they leave the care system. And then we can document that and then change things for the next generation coming into the system, because there will always be children coming into the system. And then number 8.
100%. So in terms of number 8, so both workforces to look at creating their own kind of bespoke policy on how to care for and meet the needs of the Black child or young person in care. Obviously that was the question of our last workshop. So I think we've already got some ideas on what we can be doing in terms of meeting those needs, and we need to see that in practice. And how do we see things in practice? We do need that policy, we need that procedure, we need to see it be the standard. It can't be a choice, it can't be a postcode lottery for Black children and young people in care. They need to know that every single local authority in this country is going to look after them and meet their needs.
Brilliant. And then, with the 8 points on the charter, how do you sign up to it? So, okay, brilliant. So, how do you sign up to the charter? When you sign up, it's your commitment to follow through on the points within the charter. Remember I said not every point is going to be relevant to your organisation or to your department or to your team, but choose whichever one it is that you can do and do it really, really well. So in order to sign up, you must first obtain consent from your senior leadership team. Now we know that might be a bit tricky, but fight your corner, and you got to get their consent. We don't want anyone being a lone ranger. Yeah, we need you to really go back to your local authority, go back to your teams and say, this is a charter, I'd like for us to sign up to it. And when you sign up to it, send us your name. When you've got their consent, email us to let us know that you've got their consent. Send us your name, your local authority, the team, department or service or organisation, that's whichever one is relevant to you, and then confirmation that you've read our privacy notice, which is going to be on the charter page on our website. As I said, we're not going to publicise who's on this charter. We're not going to say, oh, Ealing's on the charter and Croydon, you're not. We're not doing that. If you're on the charter, that's between you and us. That's our arrangement. We just want you to know that we're going to support you to fulfil the charter within your practice and make it known. Is that okay? And at any time that you feel that you don't want to be on the charter, you just let us know, and then we'll take you off the list. Being a part of the charter as well, we will make sure that you're part of a wider support network. So we're coming together to talk about best practice and how we can model that together. And we'll be there to hold your hands to get you through that as well. And then we'll also come back to meet with you on a 6-monthly basis. Because we know that everybody's workload is, you've got lots to do. But we will come back to meet with you on a 6-monthly basis to find out how you are doing and how we can share best practice. Because at the heart of this charter is making things better for the black children in the care system. Yep? Yeah. And I think one thing also to announce as well today, that we're going to start doing our own research. I think we should. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And the reason why we're going to start doing our own research, because research has been done by this one, by that one, by this one, by that one, and we don't know where the research is going. And there are no outcomes. So when we do our own research, we want to embed it through the charter and through the network, so that we're seeing the information that we're collating come to life in someone's practice across the nation. And that's one thing we want to do. So the charter will help us to evaluate progress. I say this hopefully, present our case to government again. Yeah, because I think it fell on deaf ears when we sat on the board for the care review. So we're going to try, we're just going to keep pushing until somebody unlocks the door and lets us in, so we can have a seat at that table and say this is what needs to be done across the nation for black children in the care system, because our care matters too, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So if my team, you want to give out the documents for the charter so that everyone's got one, if you give those out please, that would be perfect. So yes, if you give those out quite expeditiously. And if anyone's got any questions, I'll take questions on the charter, unless, yeah. Yeah, sure, give me 1 minute, yeah. 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 Okay, brilliant. Whilst we're giving, give thanks, thank you to Omar for standing with me today. All right, we're good. Yeah. All right, thank you. Take that from me. If you want to ask us any questions about the charter, please ask before you go. But at the beginning, everybody kept saying to me, well, what's going to happen after this? What are we doing next? This is what we're doing next. Yeah, we're going to build on this work as much as possible.
Mic check.
Yeah, the email, yeah, is on there. Yeah.
I got a question, but it's not direct. Is anyone from Bernardo's here?
Yes.
Okay, a few. See, I know that you're doing a report on the black care experience, and the person I was in contact with, I mentioned Judith too, and they didn't seem to reply to me about a collaboration. So I want to make it, huh? All right, cool. So yeah, I want to make sure that collaboration is actually going on, because it shouldn't be privatized. I don't even know where the information's going, but yeah, I'm glad that's happening. Sweet.
Give a round of applause for Rick. Oh, that is hilarious. That's hilarious. Okay, so a few more announcements before we close. We're really doing good. We're supposed to finish at 3:30. We are ahead of schedule. I love being ahead of schedule. I like being on time. I really, really do. So we can catch flights or trains or buses or whatever we're going to do. Yeah, that's me. I have to be on time. All right, so a few announcements before I give closing remarks. David. Give a round of applause to David.
Thank you very much for letting me talk about my project. We've heard already today about how getting your DNA can be useful. We know for some people it's not so useful. My mum didn't tell me the truth about my origins, and I didn't find them out until I did a DNA test about 5 years ago when my son was born. And so what I've done is I've got together some funding to provide DNA kits for people who have been in care. So I've only got 10 kits, but I would like to offer them to young people who are here today. They can be 18 to 35. I would like to turn it into a group thing where we work on it together and we come back together to present what we found, what our results have found. So I'm just going to leave my notebook, and I want emails. If you know young people, if you're social workers who would want this, then please write an email down, and I will email everybody on Monday with the details. But I think it's really, and the reason why I'm doing it is because I want to bring about some joy in people about knowing where they came from. So that's the project. So if you can give me email addresses, I'd be really grateful. Thank you, Sam.
Thanks, David. Last year, David was on the panel, and he came to the conference last year and he says, well, I'm handing it over to you guys now. Yeah, he's still working. Thank you, David. You're not retired. So give a round of applause for David. Brilliant. Brilliant. Vivian, do you want to come up? Come on, Vivian. Come on, come on. Give a round of applause to Vivian in a beautiful velvet dress. Hey!
Thank you very much. I just quickly, I talk on and on, but I'm not going to. I just wanted to say that I wanted to show you my new book, which is going to be published next month by Jessica Kingsley Publishers. But it didn't all start like that. I wanted to just say to you that it's by the way, it's called Diversity, a guide to working with diversity and developing cultural sensitivity, cultural competence. Now, you did mention, Judy, that when George Floyd happened, children's social care were silent. A lot of social workers were silent. We nearly forgot that part of our role is to promote social justice. But I wasn't one of those people that kept silent. I wrote an open letter to all, which I sent to Downing Street. I sent everywhere in the United Kingdom, and I was pouring out my heart about how I felt about George Floyd. I didn't stop there. I wrote my book. So I decided that the letter was published in the West Sussex County Times a month after George Floyd was murdered. But I felt that more people needed to see my letter and hear more about how to be culturally competent. And so that's how I wrote my book under a year, and I said to myself, it will be published before the anniversary of George Floyd's death, and it was. So I'm happy to say that my book, I self-published it because I was passionate. I wanted to get it out there. I didn't care how much it cost. I just wanted to get something out there to help people to practice in the way that we have been describing today. So I'm happy to say that Jessica Kingsley Publishers have now picked up this book and said to me, it's not because the initial book was just for social workers and social care staff. But I'm happy to say that this book, the new version, is for all people-facing professionals. So it's no longer just for staff. I've got the limited copies for social workers and social care staff, but this book is for all people-facing roles, and it describes to you, step by step, how to be a culturally competent practitioner. Thank you. It is available to pre-order on Amazon. It will be published on the 21st of next month. Thank you.
Somebody needs to take over Amazon. They're getting everything, right? Jeez, I don't know what's going on. Okay, so we're done. Give a round of applause. We did it. We did that. We absolutely did that. So we've got some feedback forms. I'm old school because I don't like chasing people via email to give me feedback because we don't get it back. So my team will be giving out you some forms to write your feedback and hand that back to us in before you go. Just take a minute as well. Jodine may want a group photo, but I'm not sure if that's going to work or not. Yeah, we'll figure that out. And then anybody who wants to give any video testimonials, you can please see Jodine after she's taken the group photo, and she will video your testimonial and we'll have that documented. Is that okay?